in an attempt to keep her and her 6 siblings from going into foster care. She needed to work part-time to support her family. She was still a year away from graduating high school, and her basic skills were very low due to all the time she had missed. Cece and Samantha's stories may sound exceptional, but they're really not. And sadly, there's hundreds of Brevard County residents, students that also are a lot like Cece and Samantha. And so, through no fault or failure of their own, or through the public school system, they've fallen behind, and we just need something different in order to help them be successful and walk across the stage. And that's why we're here. These are the stories and the students that we intend to impact through a partnership with Brevard County's public schools. Now, Stanley's going to talk a little bit about our target population.
Thanks again for having us here today. So something that we noticed, and looking at 2017, 2018, and 2019, I'm going to try to get the school list right. So Bayside, O'Galley, Heritage, Melbourne, Palm Bay, and also West Shore Junior, Senior had a combined 1,014 dropouts, looking at those years, non-graduates specific. And so we're applying for one dropout prevention recovery high school. And the focus of this, when I say target population, which may be one of the things Ron mentioned earlier as far as being different, is these are the students that are already, you've already lost them, just to be frank. Maybe they're not going to come back to school, they've already left, they've already dropped out. And so looking at that population, we're going to try to do our best to bring those students in to make them be successful. That's just a simple way of presenting that. The average enrollment, their age would be approaching 18, so approximately like 17 and a half years old. They're already 2 years behind their expected grade level. They've earned less than 11 credits toward graduation. When you look at their reading level, it's 95% below grade level, so they'll be looking at probably 4th grade reading level, 5th grade math level as well for these students. So these are the ones that really need that targeted extra attention. And so looking at them and the reasons why, there's a host of reasons, as Ron mentioned, not through any fault of their own or even a lack in the school district. These are the students that for whatever reason, what they have going on in their lives outside of school, it is not conducive to a traditional school environment. So looking at additional statistics, 40% of them kind of add to that list of things that they're experiencing will be pregnant, parenting, or responsible for a younger sibling at home. 44% will be working part-time or full jobs already to support themselves or their families. So our approach really is targeted for that population. I want to go into the need in Brevard. We all know that education is not one size fits all. We do our best to try to meet the needs of the most that are served, but there are hundreds of students in Brevard County that have demonstrated a need for something a little different. And I've seen them, I'm still active. Obviously, I work for Eckerd Youth Alternatives, Eckerd Connects, and we do substance abuse prevention programming, and we see that a lot of the co-occurring issues that these students are facing, and we're really targeting what we can, which we appreciate doing, but we can do a little bit more if we allow some of these alternative methods to be in place here at the school district level. So with 1,014 non-graduates identified over those 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19, there seems to be a clear need for an alternative to help those individuals. So our proposed charter school is positioned to partner with Brevard County Public Schools in this effort to provide an innovative and non-traditional option for those particular students identified. And the model that we've selected is not only supported by research, but it's also been demonstrated to have a lot of success throughout the years in multiple school districts across Florida. So all elements of this model, from the facility layout, staffing, scheduling, curriculum, they're all designed to respond to the needs of students who have dropped out or who are dangerously close to doing so, that we don't want to lose. And despite the best efforts of the teachers and all of the policies, and sometimes we have what we call initiative fatigue that we try to put in place to address all of these are the ones you're not going to catch. Facts and statistics. So our academic model is based on replication of schools currently operating in 5 districts: Orange County, Lee, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Hillsborough, and 15 high school campuses across Florida with a 12 plus year track record of successful outcomes. The model of instruction is a blended model. So computer-based instruction, certified instructor-led classes, face-to-face, full classroom, individual, small group interventions. That blended model is founded on really significant research. I'm sure once you dig into that big binder, you're able to see some of the backup information on that. As illustrated by the examples of Cece and Samantha that Ron shared with you all, many of our students struggle with just with the competing life responsibilities that they have going on, and we need a way to effectively address that. So because of our self-paced, mastery-based model, flexible scheduling, our students can always pick up right where they left off, and they don't always have that opportunity when they are faced with some of the things they battle in school. So that's, to me, is a huge, huge benefit. The three components of the academic design involve personalization, use of performance data and intervention support. Students and their parents will have access to an individualized success dashboard that allows them to view and track their progress toward graduation as they move through their coursework. And going to the schools, I've gone to a school they have already in operation, and I can see that in action where students can actually pull up their dashboard. And at this age, being close to 18, this is that kind of responsibility and accountability that they're being given while they work the school program that I think is invaluable skills, which teachers here in Brevard can do, but it's hard to focus on those students that are really slipping through the cracks sometimes, that don't have the inherent skills to be able to do that on their own. In addition to that, they can track their post-secondary exploration. We have some planning steps that we put into place and have resources at these schools to help them with that next level. With that, I'd like to pass it off to Judy for the next portion about the student support model.
Thank you, and good afternoon. One thing that I ask is, as you review the application, please, if nothing else, take time to really look at this academic model, but also the student support model. With this charter school, one of the things that we will do, just like we're doing in our other schools, is put each student through a comprehensive psychosocial assessment. Being able to identify the barriers to academic completion and success is so paramount to future success. And so as we do that, we intend to partner with social agencies that are here in the community. But what's unique is we're going to bring those community partners for support into the school. The school also has on staff mental health counselors, because a lot of times when you give a referral to a student, and if a barrier is transportation or having to work after school or take care of the siblings in the morning, it's so difficult to go and get that help. In Orlando, last year we partnered with over 40 community agencies, because 91% of the students needed some type of support and counseling to remove those barriers to that success. One of the things that you heard Stanley talk about is, 40% of the students are either pregnant, have children of their own that they're already parenting, or taking care of their siblings. It's difficult to focus on school when you have those responsibilities, as well as 44% of them are working to support their family. So we've also introduced into this model 2 different academic counseling and instructional shifts. They can go in the morning, or they can go in the afternoon, or if they have to split it up, we will work with them to be able to do so. Coupled with having career counseling available on the campus. In my line of work, working with individuals that are looking for self-sustaining long-term employment and careers, being able to give someone the credentials and the technical skills to be successful is only half the battle, and that's really the easy battle for us. The difficult one is when we have job seekers that come into our organization and they still have barriers to employment, emotional and social and barriers that have to be removed. If we can do that in our school, it makes life success so much easier for these individuals. And so one thing I can promise you, with me being on the board, we're going to work with the school, which also has a career counselor, to make sure that we're providing all of the right types of career assessment and guidance and preparation, and working with career and technical education, not only with Janice Schultz in Brevard Public Schools, but with the local college and the universities. I have a team of 12 back at my office. That's what we're experts in doing, is making sure that the credentials that are offered in secondary schools and training are appropriate to lifetime success, not only academic success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, and just one thing there too, that and Judy, I think you mentioned this, but our replication school will serve as a clinical internship site for partnering colleges such as UCF. So, when you go and you visit our schools and you see what they are in action, we have lots of support staff, which is really, as we described, the profile of our young adult. These are the things that often get in the way of their graduation. So we've got just a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we stay on time. I just want to briefly go over, how we selected ALS as our ESP, and we've said this many times in this conversation that this is a replication model, and I'm the one that has the first-hand knowledge of seeing this ESP in action and watched them from the formation of the first schools that we had in Orange County, the success of those schools, the impact that they had, and then the growth of those schools, and the reaction from the district and the reaction from the school board, and the symbiotic relationship between the board, the district, and the Dropout Prevention and Recovery School. I think one of the things that makes our school wildly successful is the fact that it's a very small campus environment. So a lot of the distractions that happen on a bigger campus that really impact our type of student don't happen as much. I mean, we don't eliminate them. It's impossible to. One of the things that happens when students walk in our doors is we provide safety and security for our students, and you probably read that in our application. They go through metal detector. They have a sense of mind that they're safe in our buildings. They also check in their cell phones. They don't have their cell phones with them all day long. This allows them to focus more on their learning. There's some key outcomes that were really appealing to us when we looked at ALS, and they really demonstrate our confidence in this ESP. So the ALS schools received I mentioned this before, received the highest rating of commendable on all 15 of their campuses, as compared to just 16% of alternative schools statewide. So they beat, everybody in this business because they specialize in this type of a group. 64% of the ALS member schools have demonstrated more than a year growth of learning gain on the 2019 math and early learning assessments. This compares to just 41% of other students in surveyed schools. And the student stability rate of 80% is exceptional when you consider the transient and unstable nature of the student body that we serve. Positive programmatic and compliance reviews by the district is what we will be looking at as an oversight board, and this is our relationship with you all, is to make sure that we're the conduit. The contract that we would have would be between this board, this nonprofit board, and the district, and then we hold our ESP accountable for running high quality, top-notch schools. They're the professionals. This is what they do. They do this all day long. They do it around Florida and other states. I think I mentioned, some outcome stuff that's really important. Even with the type of student that we attract, 100% of our kids it's a dropout prevention and recovery. 41% of those graduates are confirmed to be in college or technical school upon completion. 45% we get into employment, and we track this. Okay, we look and see what kind of jobs they got and how they're doing, and we stay in touch with them post graduation. And about 4% enlist in the military. Let's wrap up with a few points here. So, again, it's why us, why this charter school, why this oversight board, and it's really our relationship with ESP is one of oversight and management. We don't, we're not the teachers, okay, but we actually look at the data and make sure that the performance of the school is there. We're hopeful for this opportunity to work with your staff and your leadership and your guidance teams at the high schools, because quite frankly, the success of this particular charter school depends on the relationship with the sending schools. We're not out there looking for the best and the brightest. We're looking there to retrieve kids that are struggling, that may not walk across the stage. We started this presentation with talking about Cece and Samantha, and these stories could have and probably would have ended at best in stagnation and the worst in tragedy. But because of the schools like the one that we're proposing, their futures were changed. On the very day that Cece enrolled, she was connected to our school counselor, who learned of her plans for suicide and immediately intervened. Within 2 years, Cece earned 17 credits, boosted her GPA to 3.2, passed her state assessments, and was accepted into college. She credits her life and success to the charter school and to the staff that helped her work through the personal struggles that she faced. She's now a college graduate pursuing a master's degree in social work. And for Samantha, she dropped out of mainstream large campus high school. She couldn't balance the parenting responsibilities of her siblings, taking care of her siblings while working to support her family while she was in school. But she had to. She didn't have any other choice. That's what she had to do. She didn't want to drop out of school, but that's where she was headed. So through the partnership with Orange County Schools and the guidance counselor, they said, look, Samantha, we've got an option for you. It's this particular charter school. We think we can get you to graduate if you come into this charter school. And she found the flexibility that she needed to parent, okay, while also pursuing her education. And from a small campus environment, high school environment, she received individualized support to build her skills and was successful in being a role model for her siblings. She graduated from high school despite considerable odds, and now she's in her second semester at Valencia. She has received a scholarship to transfer to UCF, and she's pursuing her bachelor's degree. So in a short time, we've given you a high-level overview of the academic and support and the student support model that have proven successful in other areas around Florida. And we're looking for an opportunity to bring this kind of model to Brevard, and that's why we're here. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ron. Board members, anyone have questions for the team?
I do. I have, thank you very much for coming and presenting. I wanted to ask a question. You talked about the social emotional assessment that you do. Would there be any students that you would not take, and what would be that criteria after you had the social emotional assessment?
Well, I can start off on that, and you can certainly jump in. So the way it works is that it's a school of choice. So students and parents tour and interview and come into the school. Again, through that whole process, people determine whether or not this is a good fit for them. But we don't reject somebody because of a certain situation. But it's involvement from a parent and from a student to make a decision to come to the school. They're not assigned there. Okay, it's their choice to come.
And at 18, a lot of our students, well, not a lot, some of our students they're not living at home. They're maybe couch surfing, or they're on the streets or by themselves. I'm assuming they would be welcome to, because they wouldn't have parents to make that agreement. And at 18, you probably don't need your parents' permission. Your percentage of graduates, are you saying 100% graduate?
No.
What number of percentage graduate?
So you talk about graduation rate. We just want to keep a few things in perspective. Is that when we start off with our students, that they're behind cohort already, significantly behind cohort, and our graduation rate is very good. And I can't quote the exact numbers. I might have to turn to some of the people that are with the school if you want to get more detail on that. If I can't answer it fully for you, but again, it's just not something. It's just can't be compared when we have people that are so far behind their cohort. And the way I understand the state's measurement of graduation rate is they have to be online with their cohort to graduate.
Yeah,
So
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I do care about that, but I care about if the student is really going to graduate.
I get the
And
exact number.
And if I'm hearing you correctly, I know, but if I'm hearing you correctly, that they don't have to, like, there's no set time that they have to fit into a pigeonhole to graduate. Like it could take them several more years than
Right.
than it would be a 4-year. Okay.
Yeah, and what's absolutely amazing, and so just kind of tell you firsthand experience. In the Orange County schools where I volunteer on the board, is that we hold graduations at Northland Church. And I don't know if anybody's been to Northland Church in Longwood, but it's a huge, huge campus. And I don't know how many people sit in that and can be held in there, but it's thousands. And that place is filled with supporting family members to see their first, sometimes their first child graduate high school. And you asked about, they all graduate at different times because it's a self-paced, individualized mastery program. And so what we do is we hold annual graduations for our kids, sometimes twice a year, depending on the numbers that we have graduating. And but again, everybody gets recognized. They graduate at different times, but they're all recognized. And for that important moment to have a cap and gown on and walk across the stage and receive a Florida high school diploma, not a JD, it's a high school diploma.
The average student's grade point average when we receive them is 1.54, and having only about half of the credits of their cohort. And so it typically takes about 2.5 semesters for them to catch up. But remember too, the average age is about 17 and a half, approaching 18. So it's conceivable that they could be 19 or so before they graduate, but I think what's really important is making sure that they do graduate, do get that diploma. Because, to be honest with you, where we have great statistics for them going on to college or into the military or some type of industry valued post-secondary credential, a lot of them still have the responsibilities of younger siblings and children of their own. And so making sure that we can remove all of those psychosocial barriers, really focusing and working on making sure they're getting career advisement and technical industry certifications as they can, and then working with, again, Career Source Brevard to make sure that we then can take them and enroll them and help them go into full-time employment or part-time employment if that's what their life requires.
Stan, you had a little more
Well,
information.
over the past 5 years, 4,700 students have graduated. So that's 4,700 kids that would have ended up who knows where, or continued in the path that you described on. And so the statistic I got, 30% of average daily enrollment. But of course, also some students transition back.
Right.
They have the choice to do that as well.
After they get caught up, we can give them credit retrieval, and then we can bring them back to their senior school.
What was that, 30% number?
Average daily enrollment, is that correct?
About 30% of their students are graduating. Okay, got it, that's good. I didn't think I heard that right. Okay. Ms. McDougall, did you have additional questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Ms. Deskovich? Are you providing any kind of transportation, and where are you planning on? It sounds like the south end of the county is where you plan on being located, so how?
In our budget, we have bus passes, but we don't provide transportation. So that the way we locate our schools, and again, we're not married to an exact location in Brevard. We have done a lot of analysis to think where it would be best, and that's in South County area. However, the transportation, like the sending schools, will be, there's 6 of them that we're thinking of, and those students will need to get there, through public transportation or on their own. But that's not always a negative. We're actually preparing them for life beyond school, and with their flexible schedules and their work schedules, oftentimes they have ways to get around, or are used to finding ways to get around. But we don't have yellow buses.
Interesting.
If
I
there
mean,
are-
I love the concept and idea, and I don't know what public transportation is like in Orlando. I imagine it's better than Brevard County, so I think that might, just for your own information, might be a little bit challenging for some to
But
find.
we've made it work, at 15 campuses, we're making it work right now. And we don't believe we would have any problem here.
It's the idea for some of them. Obviously, there will be a there. Of course, these are ones that are 17 approaching 18. A lot of them do have transportation, but to go to the geographic question as well, we're not going to restrict students from anywhere going there. Of course, Brevard transportation is always an issue for everything. But even though it's located or looking to be located more south central of the county, students from all over the county can opt to go to this school.
Did you see how he looked at me? Because he knew I was giving him the stink
Oh,
eye.
I know. And just like most of that, and North County is always begging for more resources, and so we've stretched ourselves at Eckerd as much as we could to cover the whole 72 miles, which is hard. But just looking at the statistics, it seems to be pulling south for that need, but that's something that the school district would hopefully help kind of navigate with us as to where they thought it might be best, but just from the numbers, it looks like it's going that way.
So, are you expecting to have around 1,000 students at some point? Because you went over 3 to 5 years and said there's about 1,000 students in the South End. Do you felt like you could target?
So we want to submit an application for a school that would hold up to 500, okay? However, we don't anticipate, and we know how this works, we don't have 500 showing up on day one. The ESP that we selected, ALS, understands this as well, and again, firsthand experience in watching how this works when we start new campuses, is that it's through the partnership with the sending schools. That means a lot in terms of getting numbers in order to make the schools viable, but it takes time. And so the ESP, which is ALS, I hope I'm not using too many acronyms here, okay?
The management.
The management company, they understand that they're going to need to advance funds into these types of schools in order to make them successful. And so the risk, like schools, have we ever closed a school? Yes, okay? Has it been just like all of a sudden? Never. It's a relationship with the school district to say, for one reason or another, we're not going to be able to get the enrollments. And it's usually after years of trying. But again, I just want to be honest with you that it really does depend on trying to make sure that we can build up enrollments. But history has shown us, and experience and confidence in the management team that we have, that these are things that are well thought out in advance, and they understand that we're not going to open the doors with 500, and we don't really even want 500. Okay,
Right.
A nice campus size is 250 to 300. That's a great size school. But we don't want to turn away people, and we know how hard it is to re-petition the board once we've gotten approval for. If we said 200, and then we all of a sudden had 300 or 400, we'd have to come back to you and reapply. So we want to set it at 500. We'll be happy with 200, 250.
And there's a scale from year 1 through year 5 in the application, and of course what we would like to see is around 240 year 1, but knowing we wouldn't open the school until the fall of 2021. If the application is approved, then the key staff will be on board at least a year before to start building those relationships with the principals of the local high schools. And having sat on many nonprofit boards before in my life, and just now with my daytime job, we have a contractor that runs our career one-stops because they're the experts at what they do. What the board does is really look at the fiscal oversight, programmatic and strategic direction. So our board will also have a board attorney and a CPA, but we've already taken the time and have met for several hours before coming here today to look at the budgets, to understand their model and the success of their model, because at the end of the day, we're the board that's representing this charter school and making sure that you have the financial resources to be able to absorb not having the enrollment where you need to be or want to be in year 4 and 5 doesn't diminish the services to the students that you have between year 1 and 3.
So, Ms. Leskovich, I know you have a couple more questions. I just want to quickly comment. We are at 2:37, and we have 3 more sections to get through in the workshop, so I just want to be cognizant. I know we all are loving the concept that's coming to us. if we could just make sure that our questions are as succinct as possible, and then if you all could please make sure that your responses are as succinct as possible so we can get through everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
This, you called it a psychoeducational evaluation? Psychosocial evaluation? So you're gonna have 240 students. Who on staff? Are you gonna have a psychiatrist, psychologist, groups of them? How, that's a lot of kids to.
Yeah, a licensed social
Psycho
worker is
group.
on staff, full-time. And if I can, we have a special ed teacher or coordinator behind us. Do you want to hear any detail on that? They can tell you more about the how.
I might get in trouble by the chair.
Yeah, I can tell you more later.
She can promise to make them succinct.
Okay, so you're going to have them on staff, and then is that you said you're gonna use UCF interns. Are they gonna be counseling students? Are they there, are they being overseen by?
Right, they're overseen, so they're not independent, just working on, again, it's a program that's been established with UCF for the oversight and the mentoring of the interns.
And they're under license supervision.
And you think they'll come to Brevard just as easily as they were in Orange, just like for a few months? Is that how that?
And again, I mentioned UCF, but that's not the only place that will have people that have an interest in social work.
I just want you guys to be successful. I think this is a great program.
We do
but
too.
I just, I'm thinking about Brevard, and we're so different than Orange County, and it seems,
Well,
Yeah.
and building the relationships with the community resources here in Brevard as well. I know for our customers at CareerSource, we give referrals. But if you have a barrier to transportation or you're working two jobs, it's very difficult to be able to get there. So our intent is like what we've done throughout the state and other states is to have those relationships and have those community partners come to the school to meet with the students and their families rather than relying on the student to have to go to them.
Between Eckerd and CareerSource and our Prevention Coalition and all of our community resources that we're connected with, I think we can leverage the support to make sure that can happen. At least 90%.
And again, we're here today as the founding board members, and that's a clear distinction because we're going to build a board. We're all local, we're all Brevard residents. We didn't come from some other place to talk to you today. We live here, and this is our community. And that we're going to have more Brevard residents and different expertise that we feel that we need to provide good oversight and direction for this special type of dropout prevention recovery charter school. So, we anticipate at least 5, maybe 7 on our board.
And we're partnered with several online MSW programs as well. But succinct.
Okay, last question from me
Yes.
is, and it's kind of a big one, sorry. How is this different than our adult education program that is also providing many of these same services and also kind of a safety net to make sure that some of our kids don't drop out? How is this different?
I'll take a stab at that and make it succinct. Is that in this replication model, this is really something that's just designed for this type of dropout where, yes, there are other options that young adults can go to in district right now, but this particular model has a lot of built-in things that are right there for focused specifically on this type of young adult, an at-risk, or I like to call them an at-promise student that we just have to kind of find a way to help them to be successful. And that is the support services are phenomenal. Like when you walk into one of our schools, the environment feels like you're in a business. Okay, it doesn't feel like you're on a school campus. The way the interaction happens between the staff and the students, even though these are high-risk students, they turn around because they rise to the expectation that the staff has for them in this environment. It truly is something to see. And as I said, I spent 35 years before I left the workforce, and this was my focus, was working with at-risk youth. And we were lucky, the organization I was with, we had over 350,000 young adults that we worked with. So I got to see a lot of startups, a lot of setups, and have a lot of belief and confidence that we could do this in Brevard and make it very successful and reach a group of kids that haven't been, they just need a second chance, just need an opportunity to walk across the stage and be successful too.
And to briefly add to, you cannot discount the normality of being in your age cohort as well, that focus, which they may not always get in every adult ed situation. So here they're able to go to school and still feel like, yeah, they're at a business-like setting, but they're also in school with their cohorts, their age groups. If you'd like to come tour the school, you are more than welcome to tour the closest one, which is
Econ.
Econ is not, yeah, that's when we went to. It's
Yeah,
not that
it's,
far away at all.
Yeah, 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes.
Please do.
Tops.
The visual says a lot.
Yeah, it just change your, your perspective, and again, you can look at a big 4-inch binder, but if you actually come and walk around the campus, it's a whole different deal.
It's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Susan?
Do you have any?
No, you asked my questions, so thank you.
So how, and if you, so that I don't get, I'm in close proximity to the chair.
You could get
You
swatted.
can make sure that your responses are quick and I'll make mine quick. How old can an individual be in your school till?
Well, the legal age that you can not attend high school anymore, I had this in my head and I forgot. What's the legal age for school? 22? 22 years old, so.
Okay, and then, so all the funding is through FTE, not adult ed type funding, it's all through FTE. And then I wanted to say you guys are probably the most qualified charter board I've ever heard of in my entire life. With some of the, I've worked with your organization for workforce. I mean, you guys honestly, like, this is crazy. But I also wanted to ask, how many IEPs 504s make up your population?
Okay, that's a question that we'll have to let the folks behind us answer if that's allowed.
Yeah,
I'm not
no.
sure.
I am all about it if we can do it in under a minute or I can follow.
16%.
And then do you work with vocational rehab on programs to
Yes,
utilize
we
that
do.
60%?
Yes, we do.
What provider do you guys usually use through vocational rehab?
We work with Point 10, and
Okay.
through them, we partner with a local agency.
Perfect. So you would be using local agencies for the vocational rehab here. All right, transportation was answered. Now, career and tech classes are very expensive. So lifts on machinies, all that stuff. I know that there's an online option for a lot of that stuff. We've actually purchased them through or used them through Career Source. Is that kind of the model we're using? So they're online learning about the different pieces on the computers, okay? And then what is the tie-in to apprenticeships afterwards? Do you guys have the plumbers, pipe fitters, the machinists, all those groups coming in
This is
behind?
why we recruited this lady.
that is
Really,
where I was going with this.
See, again, Jude and I both spent our careers in.
Come on now, you're the head of workforce, so you
Workforce
should be able to
development.
use these guys too.
But again, it's a link. So although the Department of Labor dollars under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act really just focus these days on out-of-school youth, it's a perfect match because our schools are going to produce out-of-school youth. Okay, they're going to graduate in the middle of the year. They're going to become eligible for apprenticeships, internships through Career Source.
Sure.
And so this is how we want to link them to Brevard employers to get them employed. What we really need with our young adults is rapid workforce attachment. That's what they really need, okay, because they don't have the luxury of a sponsor to maybe send them to a 4-year degree school. So we need to help them be successful with certifications, credentials, apprenticeships.
And that's all built into your curriculum, that's
So
all in the back.
that's how we do it.
Okay, and then what percentage of this, so one of the issues that I have with some of the charters that I see, not so much in our county, but in other places, is that the percentage of revenue that comes in from the FTE dollars, in some regards doesn't stay so much inside the school, but it actually goes to management companies and organizations outside of it. Do you guys know a revenue model that you guys have right now? How much of the percentage is actually staying at the school with the salaries and all that stuff?
Yeah.
As opposed to the board and facilities? Does anybody know that?
So the agreement that we'll have with our ESP is a 97-3 agreement. Okay, so that means, now, let me explain that a little bit. So
Sure.
all of the bills, including the upfront costs of locating, renting space, we don't own buildings, we're not a real estate company, so we're not gonna own a building and rent it back to the district or anything like that.
Good.
But but they pay all the bills, they hire the staff, they turn on the lights, they supply the computers, they supply the desks, all that. And so what this board does with the 3% is, and I've seen this firsthand again in our Orange County schools, is we accumulate funds and as a nonprofit board over time, and we're able to plow that back into our schools.
Okay.
So I
your
don't.
board members make up 3% of the FTE dollars that come in, and out of that, not-for-profit, does all 3% of that go to your salaries, or is
No,
it?
we're volunteers.
That's the next thing.
Yeah, and so the people,
Have enough jobs.
we have that we hire.
There's
we
some
got
models
enough
out there
I'm
that are.
retired.
Good.
But on our staff, the people that we pay for, is we have an independent CPA that works for the board.
Sure.
Okay, we have legal counsel that works for our board.
Mhm.
We have an outside auditing firm that audits everything from our schools. And so that's where some of the 3% goes, is to pay for those things that happen.
Sure, thank you for that. And do any of the vendors have like ownership within it? So like I'm seeing it, oh, good deal. I'm liking you guys even more. Every time I ask you a question, you guys are answering it. And because you don't receive any money, there's no conflict of interest for workforce or any of the organizations that you guys use, which is beautiful, thank you. And then the last piece is, how can I help? Because you guys are putting together a model that I love.
Just say yes.
Oh,
Motion, yes.
all right.
Take a tour of the company.
Thank
Make
you.
a tour and say yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Campbell, no follow-up questions?
All right, very good. Thank you so much. Stanley, great to see you as always. Nice to see you as part of this program. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
No. It's not a scone. You don't have to worry about that.
What is it? It's not what?
Thank you. Out there. No. They were out there this morning and it was absolutely starving.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
You know, if you get to the end of those crackers, you'll probably have twins. Just saying.
Thank you.
That's all we need.
Everybody will be happy. Wife will be happy.
I'm really happy that not only that you guys are doing this, but that you guys are in our county. Because I think there's other projects that we can work collaboratively on.
Speaking from my perspective, and I've done this for 24 years with our organization, he's probably the best 3 board members we've ever had. And he keeps talking about powering up. I'm like, how do you do that?
Good to see you.
I don't know. I am technology challenged.
Okay, or not, did you trip them on the way out? Is that competition for you?
Yes, it is.
I've already forewarned them that Jeff is, throwing down.
I like it. I want to see the trenches. I want to see the battles in the trenches.
Well, how am I supposed to see them if you wrap them up
I
like that?
had my eye on you. I think you took a couple while I wasn't looking. I have to wrap them up now and make more noise.
Go back and watch the video.
Are we recording now?
Yes. Are we having issues with the projector again?
I think so.
Mr. Susan Klein.
I'm going to throw Gibbs into the center pit.
Well, Gibbs can't reach
I don't
that.
know why it doesn't.
That's the first piece. I played
Hands on. I see the power, I see the light.
Russell, earlier today we had to unplug the screen beam and reset it.
If we have a long
Maybe it's the source.
You're gonna form a chain.
Last time I went under, I was like, my butt's gonna.
Well, they may have to
I think hooked them up.
This stuff. Sorry. Do you just want to open it up on your computers?
Yeah, we can do that.
Walk you through that,
Yep.
since I sent it to you already?
Yep.
Did you get the latest and greatest one?
Yeah.
Yes. Because there were just some date typos that needed to be corrected, and I sent you the new one.
Attached to the one that says typo.
Yes. So let me know when you're ready to roll. Oh, there it is. There it is. You want me to stand up there, Russell? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, there we go. It says typo.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, here we go.
but it's,
There it is, okay.
So, we're back at the table today. We talked about BAS fees last year, and you asked us to circle back and report out to how the fee increase impacted us and any other proposal we may have for our efficiency. So I just want to refresh your memory, if you recall, that the required accounting treatment of BAS is like an enterprise fund. So it is in the business of business. And that is the way we have to treat it. So these are just a couple of refresher slides for you. Last year, this was the proposed non-employee increase to eliminate debt. Do note that in the blue box, that though we proposed to increase it to 35%, $35, excuse me, we only took it to 29 for AM services, 51 to PM services, even though we proposed 60, and for AM PM services, instead of going to the full 65, we went to 55. And also recall that we held our employees harmless, so we did not increase anything for our employees.
Wait. So, hang on.
These were,
So the green was, so you didn't increase,
The
So we
green
didn't
was
do the
18-19, not
Yes.
19-20.
right,
okay, so you did go to 35, 60,
Yeah.
and 65.
well then it,
It's a recommendation.
yes, it was recommendation. So,
Okay.
so you asked us to do a 3-year longitudinal study. And so I'm gonna go all the way down to the last bullet, identify needs to increase in subsequent years. We will share the impact of last year's fee increase, and we do need to revisit whether or not we need to increase again based on our financial status for this program. So this is a chart that just shows with the fee increase, the impact on our student participation. And actually, the impact rose. We had more students participate even though we did increase the fee basis.
Are you serious?
So it really wasn't a negative impact whatsoever. Do note, however, that we are discussing eliminating the early release fee because there are a total of 4 students in the entire county that partake in that. So there's more bookkeeping than it is worth. So we are talking about eliminating that. This again did not affect our employees. This is a non-employee fee increase.
Can I ask a quick question on
Uh-huh.
that, Jeff? The 4 students that are participating in that, do we have other students that have, like, that early release day fee is for only on early release days, right?
Correct.
So the majority of our students are using it other days
Yes,
in
ma'am.
addition to early
Yes.
release? Okay.
Either PM only or maybe AM, PM combinations. So the next was a financial projection that Maureen Mason helped me do from finance as far as if we did not increase the revenue. And I apologize, this is kind of blurry, even my context didn't want to work. Our number one expense is salary. That is, so what you're seeing here with the salary increase is that we are still starting the school year in the red and ending the school year in the red. If there is not a revenue increase, we will never come out of that sustainability level. So this is just an example, this is just a chart that shows you our expenses versus our revenue. And there's quite a gap, and continues to be a gap from what we bring in to what we expend. This is the same slide that you saw last year about our expense categories. Again, salaries and benefits are 84% of what we spend to support this program. So our proposed recommendations for all our CUNYs that participate in BAS, we actually have 3 options. We want to share with you that the way this is shared out is non-employees are at the top, employees are in the middle, and the bottom row shows the annual amount for all clients. So it breaks it out so you can see the difference. Option 1, it represents the results of a one-time increase, either a 5% or a 10% increase, which also if you include the employees' shares, an increase of $1 to $1.50 per week. It's not a gigantic increase when you're talking about our employees, because remember, they benefit from still a 50% discount for non-employees. So that's a one-time increase, which would bring us back to the table next year, because as later on, again, without a substantiated increase for the next couple of years, will not get out of the red, because what that doesn't calculate is another salary increase for next year. So option 2 is an increase of 3% over the next 3 years. I am recommending that we look at a 3-year plan, either this one or the next one. It keeps our community informed, it supports and sustains our program, and then we avoid this annual conversation. We would not necessarily need to come back to the table every year to have this discussion. And at the bottom, you can see what the total increase for all clients would be, or you can separate it out. Again, because the decision can be just to increase non-employees or to increase across the board. The financial projection with a 3% revenue increase, you can still see that we are in the red for 2021, 21, 22, and finally in year 22, 23, we become in the black and we make a profit, which is again the purpose of an enterprise fund.
Is that 3% each year?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a hard time.
Okay, so it still takes us a couple years to eliminate our debt. And again, remember, these calculations are based on this year's salary rate.
And is that in the millions?
Thousands.
So it's 118,694,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And then 1,050 is what? I don't know why my brain is not.
That's $1 million.
So that's $1 million. That's what I meant, is it in the millions?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. So
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
we don't have a financial projection on the 5 or 10%, right? Or am I missing
No,
it?
I did not. I did not do that one.
And is that 5% year, or just
No, that's
one
just
flat
one
time?
flat
5%?
time increase.
Which still wouldn't bring us out.
Slide has a
of the debt.
Right.
Because clearly
The
we need
next
5%.
one has a 5% just for 1 year, so you'll see it in the next slide. It just doesn't have a separate one. Sorry, I did not do that one.
And if I remember correctly, aren't we still below what the industry is in the
Yeah, and you'll
area?
see that on another slide.
miss that?
Yes, that's okay, but you're absolutely right. So again, here we are with a 3% revenue increase and the expenses. And you'll see we don't overcome our expenses until 2022. 23, excuse me. The next proposal is a 5% annual increase for the next 3 years. And this is where you begin to see a change in 2021 is our last year, 21, 22 is our last year of ending in the red, and 22, 23 actually begins to show a profit. Keep in mind.
Ms. Archer,
Yes, sir.
I think we're on different presentations, because
Okay.
Did you get the one that was?
You get the newest one?
Should be on the one that's titled
Yeah.
I sent
typo.
it to you yesterday.
I got from your email that said typo?
Yeah, it did, it accidentally at the top said 2021 and then 2021 again. The numbers, these numbers are all precisely the same. It was the years that there was a typo. And I'm sorry, I did not catch that until about the 10th review yesterday afternoon, in which case I had to ask Maureen to quick fix it for me. So you see here that we begin to make a profit. And part of what it is that BPS does pull money out of our BAS program to assist us in other costs throughout the district.
So the program is profitable, it's just that we're taking the profit.
Correct.
Supplementing the operating fund.
Yes, it's in the operating fund. Whoops. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, so again, this is just a chart so you can see revenue and expenses. And I keep reminding you that none of this shows a salary increase, so I don't know where we will be 3 years from now with that. So our financial impact, I liked this slide. It showed you option 1A, 1B, one was the 5%, one was the 10%. Those are the one-time increases next year, or option 2 and option 3 over a 3-year period.
And these projections are with the expenses being maintaining the same
Correct,
over 3 years?
correct.
So that's
And
not,
so these
no
are-
investment in new equipment, toys, games,
Correct,
nothing? This
It's-
is just to,
It's based on what we normally spend every year on those type of things. So materials and supplies is about 7% of what we bring in.
It's
So-
almost a 25%
With no increase, like no better service in any way, shape, or form. Same thing with the.
Correct.
Why, how do you get 25% increase? It's
If you
9%,
look at,
no?
if you look at the financial projections and go from operating expenses of purchase services, materials and supplies.
What are you
capital
looking at,
outlay,
though?
Any of the financial
5%
projections.
or the 3%?
3%, 5%, any of them. If you look at 17, 18, 19.
Are you
start-
looking at this map?
Yeah,
on
you can-
3%.
And they should be, it's okay, I'm just saying that if you look at the operational increase of cost in purchased services, that's an increased cost of close to 25% right there, from this past year to this year. Does that make sense to you? So it's not like we're starting out at a flat line and we're just going through. We've got a couple of increases from last year that will sustain for, what I see, 3 or 4 years. So regardless of if it's 3, 5, or 10%, the operational projections come in about the same. And that's what I was saying. So although it looks like we're just not doing a better job, those are flat. And
Well, keep in mind, excuse me, there is operating budget built in now that builds in and, updating.
She said there's 7% of that.
Right.
There's no,
But-
I'm just saying if someone's gonna increase my fees that much, I'm thinking.
Well, here's your comparison, just so that you know.
Well, let me pause for a
Sorry.
second, because that's a legitimate question. Keep in mind, last year was the first fee increase we had done in
10 years.
10 years. So although the program had absorbed increased costs just by virtue of raises, we never increased the cost of the program. So.
But we're not, if we're taking funds to throw into the general operating fund,
Yes.
we're not using the funds that parents are giving towards this program, just for this program.
That's
already.
correct, because it's an enterprise, but we also don't charge the program for district-run administrative fees either. It is self-supporting,
Correct.
but we do run financials through our finance department and so on, which we do.
Did you say doo-doo?
Which we do with other grant-related programs. We do charge, and food service, we charge administrative fees and so on.
So we could say the money that we take from them is administrative fees.
No, not even close.
Well, the fact is, we don't have to do this.
Right.
I mean, it's providing a service, but it's also generating funds for us that every school district who chooses to do something, an enterprise fund, business can do. So, and, you talked about, we're not increasing what we're offering, but we're increasing our prices. Well, prices of a Big Mac is a lot more today than it was 10 years, 20 years ago, but you get the same food. Just, it's not any bigger. It's just inflation. So, sorry if anybody's hungry.
So this
Sorry, can I ask
is,
you a
this is
Big
still a comparison, and the reason we did this is, this is where we are currently this year in comparison to other community daycare opportunities. This is your various options so that you can do a numeric comparison, but we still fall out right around in here even when we do our highest increase.
Sarge, I have a quick question
Yes,
for you.
sir.
So a lot of these projections show that we're gonna become, if I look at the 3%, for instance, we're increasing close to $500,000 to $700,000 a year in revenue, from 2021 to 2022 to 2023. And it shows that we come out of the hole because we're pulling basically $3 million out of the position.
Right.
It seems that this trend is gonna increase at 3% significantly every year. These numbers look like they're moving up with the increase, right? So say, for instance, between 22 and 23 is gonna be $700,000. So
Can
the,
you just,
Yes, sir.
which slide are you
I
referencing?
apologize,
You're
financial
on the
projections with
Which
the
slide?
You're on the 3%?
Yes. And I just did this as a minimum to compare to. So at a 3%, our income before transfers is $3.2 million after our expenses. The year before is 2.4, the year before that's 1.9. So the trend is going up, right? $500,000 to $700,000. With the increase, what is the position from the district or the staff to what we will do with those extra dollars? Is that to go to our profit bottom line? Are we creating a reserve? Are we putting it back into salaries? Does that make sense to you?
It would be to offset, right now, our current operating budget has depended on $2.3 million from
Sure.
the enterprise fund. So we are not receiving the full $2.3 million. by the deficit that's shown. So it would be to replenish that, basically refund the operating budget that has relied on that as part of our district's budget.
So in 2023, we start turning a profit of between $500,000 and $700,000 increase if it's the trend rate's right. The idea is the extra money that comes out would be added on top of the transfers out to replenish the previous years of positions that we funded the offsetting costs.
Correct. You'll see that we went into the red in 2010-11, so we've been running in the red for just about the last 10 years. So it would take 3 years to get back out of the red, and that would just begin to replenish the covering it in the red unless the board directs otherwise.
No,
And some of the schools are supported by our 21st Century Grant. That's where a lot of that money goes in that's not even included in here. So the children in those programs don't pay a fee whatsoever. So.
Totally understand. Next question is that being the fact that we are dealing with retention and recruitment inside of this too, because I get pinged from every after-school parent or teachers and stuff like that at different schools. We have staff members that we need, like we're down a couple positions in different places. Who controls how much they make, and can you take that? They're not in our bargaining unit, they're under the auspice of the company that is Enterprise Florida?
No, they're not part of Enterprise.
1010.
They're part of 1010 or.
Brevard Aftercare is part of 1010.
Okay. Okay,
Right.
all right.
So they're under our contract.
Yep, thank you. That's all I need.
And I would just mention, keep in mind that whatever fee increase there, if we commit to a 3-year fee increase, that is under the premise that there is no salary increase in those 3 years. So
So it's
provides
not-
some
that's
caution to
projection.
do a 3% for 3 years may be limiting because we had a 3+% raise this year. So that 3% increase didn't even cover the cost of the raises that went into the program for this year.
Nancy, if I'm correct, it was $240,000 impact on the fee increase
This
to
is
the
like
BAS
comes-
program
That's
this
the
year.
budget
Fund 100.
But this is one of our special revenue funds that comes down from the top, and it's just something to keep an eye on. I like the
Yeah, but we
multi-year. I
don't
don't
pull
like
money
coming back
from
every
that,
year.
when we talk about a raise and we're cutting everywhere to pull money for a raise, we don't ever look at this and say we are pulling money out of their budget for a raise. It's always from
It's
somewhere
charged
else.
against their budget. What happens is the dollars we have available to come back to the district at the end of the year are reduced by whatever the cost of that raise was for that employee group. This year, that estimated cost was around $200,000. We actually built that into our costs, knowing that it will get charged against this account, but we've been pulling money. So we did count in the cost of this year's raises, the $200,000 that was applicable to just this employee group.
So you've
But
been
normally, it wouldn't. It would come out of the revenue of this program.
You've been the district's been taking up $2.2 million since 2015-16, but our increases haven't happened. Salaries have gone up, cost of expenses have gone up, and yet that has never veered whatsoever. So
I
the same
suspect
amount
what
of
you're
money is
seeing as
withdrawn.
the increased cost of this program is not because, it is nothing more than the compounding effect of raises being contributed to the program. Does that make sense?
It's just strange that we haven't accounted for that in some
We do.
way.
Well, it does
Along
look
with the
like in the
investments, it's in
projections
special
that you're
revenue.
raising the, a little bit, by a little bit
Yes.
each year, the salaries and benefits, so they're accounting for a
Yeah,
little bit,
like-
looks, it's going up about 100,000.
Facility use
dollars a
money,
year, which is-
investments, enterprise funds, all that's in that special revenue.
Okay, I have a separate question. Okay. On the comparison chart with the other childcare
Yes.
organizations,
Mhm.
when you have the price under AM/PM rate, you have option 1, 1B, 2, 3.
Mhm.
Is that 60, say for option 3 at $64, is that year 1 of a 5%? Or is that the price after 3 years of 5%?
That is 5% for 3 years, so that would be after 1 year.
So it would still, after 3 years,
Mhm.
it's going to be
Mhm.
5% more, 5%
Yes.
more?
Option 3, after 3 years, the AMPM rate went to $70.
And, the other businesses are very likely to also
Right.
increase.
So you
But
still-
even at $70, we are still below.
Correct.
And are we double, triple verified that these fees that we have listed, and we're just taking everybody's word for it, that are plugged in, are they, how recently have we collected them? And are we sure this is not like week-long, all-day-long childcare for a 2-year-old? We're sure this is
This
before
is
and
af-
after care.
This is
Somebody
before
did
and
this
after care
recently.
that Debbie vetted out with our
Okay.
competitors.
Sorry.
And
to
that would be,
ask
I
that.
believe, Nancy, we started
We
this.
called within a month. is
That's
when
what I
we made
thought.
these phone calls.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Any other board members have any questions?
What do you need from us and when for the
A
difference?
directive of which way you wish to travel,
Can we give direction?
or do we need to wait till the board
We
meeting?
give direction, we can't vote.
And then we have to vote.
We can discuss.
Well, my daycare just went from $500 to $800 for my
Holy
kids.
per month.
All right, per month. Increased costs across the district are increasing regularly from many of them. But that is a different type, like that is a Vieira, long leaf, it's faith fellowship is what it is, it's for my little girl. So I don't know the increased.
Only for one?
Oh, yeah.
Just for the baby?
Oh, yeah.
Just for all day.
From 500 to 800, it's from all day. What I'm saying is, and I apologize about the comparison, it is apples to oranges. But the idea that there are other organizations that are increasing their fees is there. And I think that with, you look at the average salaries inside of our district have increased more than any other county in the state. We have, the people are making more money in our community, and I think that it's advantageous for us to keep up with the trend of growth and not fall behind, kind of like we did with insurance, where we didn't raise any rates, we did those things. So I'm okay with raising the rates, 3%, 5%. You know, that's up to you guys.
I'm certainly okay with raising it 5% over 3 years, just because we're never gonna catch up, and our rates are still very low or very comparable, or very reasonable. I don't know how.
And a lot of
everybody else-
people use this for convenience because our kids are already there.
Right.
So we are, so you would say 5% each year for a total of 15% after 3 years.
After 3 years, correct.
And that puts us in a good,
Yes. It helps us eliminate the debt that we are currently
kind of, it helps us keep up, because if we end up giving good raises over 3 years.
Right.
Or it also helps us allow to get better purchase services, materials and supplies, capital outlay, things that we can enhance programs after school with. And I think that that's the other key that we can't forget.
And as I
Campbell, would you like to weigh in?
But this is not with employees. Employees remain flat. No 5% raise.
I feel very strongly that at some point in time, we can no longer hold our employees harmless, because they're already getting 50% of 2009's fee. And so if you were to increase it, it's $1 to $1.50, depending upon whether they take AM, PM, or AM, PM only.
These numbers are based upon, and I apologize, I should.
That's okay, no.
These numbers are based upon non-employee.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me make
But,
sure.
but you also have employees on your list as well, so you just have to look down. So again, if you charge them $60, it's $30 to our employees. They get a 50% discount.
Oh, so we're
Yes.
increasing theirs too.
Yes, we have.
It's
But
just-
by the same percentage, not, so
It
it's,
won't be the same total amount, it'll be half of it.
correct.
Half,
It's
right.
$3 for a
So instead of-
full pay person, for a non-employee, that's
$1.50.
only $1.50 for an employee. Over 3 years, I think it's,
It's
$4
$4.50, like for the most expensive, which is AM, PM, it's $4.50. At the end of 3 years, you'll be paying $4.50 more a week. It's about it's $1.50 more
That's-
each year per week, yeah.
That's great.
I like whatever we do, I think doing it over 3 years is more palatable, and it keeps us more on pace with other
Correct.
businesses, because, they may have a big jump in 1 year, or they may, but that way we're not gonna be ahead of them 1 year and behind. We're never gonna be ahead of some of them, because you've left off a lot of the more expensive ones too. I would imagine Pineapple Cove, and some of them are quite a bit more expensive, mustard seeds and things like that. 3 or 5%, it's still a pretty small increase each year. A $2 increase each year, and the weekly rate seems pretty palatable. And it puts us in a much better financial position. But
And individuals that are on free and reduced have reduced rates, how does that work?
No, many of the free and reduced lunch students that attend our schools that have 21st century grants don't have a fee whatsoever.
That's what I was
So
getting
they already attend under
Yeah.
that premise. And we do have a scholarship. Do you ladies remember how many scholarships we give away?
75-ish
Seven,
across the
okay.
board. We do over 500,000 a year in scholarships.
Thank you.
We
Which
also
have-
have the limited use fee that teachers, if they pick up their children within the first hour, their limited use fee is a straight $7 a week.
Yeah, I know about that fee.
How does the scholarship work?
Need basis. Yeah, it's a need basis, but a lot of times it's also by principal request.
Whose schools get more out of our districts?
I'm sorry.
No, do not answer
He's
that.
being a smart aleck.
Where is the scholarship money provided through?
That comes out of
Just
our
out of the
fund,
profit.
Joe.
Okay.
Ms. Deskovich, would you like to weigh in?
I think for fiscal health, we need to go for the 5% over 3 years. I don't wanna hit anybody with that much of an increase on a one-time pop. And I think the smaller increase.
Wait, 5% over
Is-
3 years is 5% each year for 3 years. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the flat rate up front, either one of them is too much at one time for anybody. I think the 3% will put us in a place where, especially if we have to include raises in the future, where I think we're gonna be sitting back at this table, and I think the 5% is the only option to stop coming back and having to feel like we're in the hole.
Ms. Archer, I think you have your marching orders.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Robin Novelli, Chief Operations Officer, and Kevin Thornton, Director of Food and Nutrition Services, will give us a fee update on food and nutrition services. Following that information, Ms. Archer and Mr. Novelli will give us a fee update on regional busing.
I really hope that you are going to bring food.
Pictures.
Kevin,
Pictures.
that's not gonna help.
Right, do we have a projection of,
Hey, you've got new menu items to tell us about too?
But no samples.
No samples like that wasn't we
Love
talking 2
that.
years ago to the board meeting, all those great samples and.
Do that again?
I missed that one, darn.
Yeah, he
Let
had
it
them
just be
serve
known
us
that if you ever do a
all
workshop
the
again,
board
you better bring your
meetings.
food.
Yeah, bring all the new food around. It was great. It was a great kickoff for new food.
That might be bribery, I don't know if that's acceptable.
As long as it's under $25.
Your program.
Um,
You guys are paying for it.
Kevin,
As long as it's under $25.
I don't know what you guys are doing with the cinnamon rolls in this place.
Oh,
Here,
I don't know how many were in that plate, Kate. I
we're
figured one of them.
cooking with the real flour and not whole grain, so
Oh.
it makes a world difference,
Those
and I'm
things
not
were-
calorie
There's no calorie count?
There's no calorie count on those.
I may have eaten
Four.
five. No, I had another one after
Yeah, at
that.
least had
5
four.
of them.
Do they have their, do you all have his
Does that look disgusting?
No, I think he's got a box full there.
No, I'm thinking about how
I
great that
haven't.
sounds. And I'm like, oh my God.
And I could totally eat
So
5
two
cinnamon rolls right
cheers,
now.
hey, 2 cheers of approval on the regular flour.
Can you work on getting that approved through the USDA so we can bring those back to school? We would appreciate it.
Yeah, whole grain cinnamon rolls,
Thanks, Ms.
just,
Pam.
they're not
Yeah,
the same.
why even make a cinnamon roll if you're gonna make a whole grain?
We could probably get those.
Mr. Souza would like to say
No,
something.
no, do not let that out.
I can see it.
So this is,
Do not even start that flower bar.
You're right, we could probably get whatever we wanted, it might be worth it.
Really, you think you'd care?
Hey, be here for the opening.
Oh, my Lord.
Come on now.
Help me.
Oh my God, look at that.
Get regular cinnamon rolls.
Hey, listen, I mean, it's.
Mr. Novelli.
It's worth an ask. I like it.
Our chair's trying to rein this in.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thornton and I are going to talk to you a little bit about food and nutrition services. First of all, we're going to briefly mention some of the accomplishments that Mr. Thornton has accomplished here in the last few years, even prior to my arrival. He's done some amazing things, and we want to highlight those real quickly for you. But then we want to get into the operation metrics and also some opportunities for revenue. So, Mr. Thornton, tell us what you've been doing the last couple of years in food and nutrition services.
as you all know, we rebranded. We successfully rebranded our operation. You know, it's we've been focusing on trying to make some changes there with regards to that. Along with that, we've come up with our brand mission statement and also our promise of what we're looking at doing in rural and
food service. Along with, we've done quite a bit of good job with reissuing, new signage, new uniforms, new menu layouts. I mean, it's all across the board, and we're very proud of that piece. One of the things that we've also proud of is in 2020, we launched the Serving Up Happiness. That's the focal point with regards to what we're doing in our cafeteria. It's culture change that's taking place with regards to what's happening in our cafeterias. Along with, we've started to join our team with the recruiting piece of it. This has been very successful for us. We've been able to capture some folks that are interested in joining our team and then helping them walk themselves through the hiring process and also seeing that they're placed at a school. The other piece here is, we focus in on streamlining our breakfast items and being able to make sure that we got good quality items out there. And we're very proud of what we're doing in this arena here with being able to make sure that each kid can start their day off with a fresh breakfast entree. The same thing with the lunch. Lunch has done a great job with regarding we being able to focus in on what we're offering in our students. The Kickin' Chicken is one of the most popular items that we've launched this past year, and it's a great item for our students and have great feedback on. But a lot of green, a lot of effort there with regards to what we're offering. The other piece there is the Try It Tuesday. Try It Tuesday has been a huge success for us in getting parent engagement and also volunteers in our schools. This is the menu. We're working with the UF Extension Office and being able to brand that piece there and being able to really run with that. And we have ideas for the future with next year with being able to make that a little bit more involved in our schools on an ongoing basis instead of just focusing on a day.
Can I just pause you for a minute and say that after the November 19th Dragon Fruit Day, my son came home and said we have to go buy dragon fruit.
Wow.
Yay,
That's
success.
awesome.
And he doesn't
Awesome.
like weird foods, so.
I understand the alliteration of Try It Tuesday, but I can't, they do requests at our school for volunteers to come in and Try It Tuesday, and I want to be there, but guess where I am on Tuesdays, Kevin? So.
Well,
Not every Tuesday.
Not every Tuesday.
When the Try It Tuesday days, it's always board meeting days. They don't do it every single Tuesday. They
We don't
always
purposely do that. We'll make
Good answer, Mr. Dawson.
Just give me one. I just want to go hand out
We will
dragon fruit.
give you some options.
Why don't we do Try It Tuesday here, and then they can,
Are
you know,
you
that
gonna
way.
try it?
Well, I was looking at
Not
some
if
of
it
these
has
options
sugar.
I may not be trying. I eat kale, hummus I'm not a big fan of, dragon fruit I'll try, zucchini I go, purple cauliflower.
Yeah. Did you call it cauliflower?
Radishes? Oh my
cauliflower.
goodness, I can't imagine.
Rashes.
something
I will try it,
like
I will
that.
try it Tuesday.
As you may be aware that we offer quite a few feeding programs. Our bread and butter is certainly breakfast and lunch for offerings that we're doing at our sites. We also participate in the federal program for the fresh fruit and vegetable. We also feed our students, our child care students at Head Start at the 13 sites, day snack, along with the supper program that we're offering at 37 sites that we're doing at the school level now. And then we also vend to the Brevard after-school program for snacks that they're offering at the school level there. Summer's a very busy time for us, and we're continually operating summer programs, and we also do vended summer programs at the site levels too. So with that,
Mr. Thornton, how many meals do you serve a day?
how many meals a day? About 56 million. 56,000 meals a day. You threw me off. I was going with the 10 million mark.
Say it again?
3 slides away.
Oh, sorry.
6,000 meals a day.
We're gonna get that in 3 slides here. So let's take a look at some of the
50.
metrics that Dr. Mullins is bringing up. First of all, we have our revenue sources, and as a slice of the pie there, no pun intended, you can see the federal and state reimbursements are 2/3 of the pie, and those other areas make up the other sections. Go on to the next slide. That data is in the far right column of this slide, but compared to 2 years prior and 5 years ago, you can see the trends there and how that's changed slightly in the last few years. You also notice the free and reduced lunch percentage changing on the bottom. We had a spike in that after some hurricanes 2 years ago.
Federal and state reimbursements. So that is breakfast funds, correct? And that is free and reduced lunch reimbursements, obviously. What else is in there? Anything else?
It's any of the federal reimbursement dollars. So we get reimbursements for both breakfast, lunch, and snack, and for free reduced and paid. So it's all that
It's all rolled
combined.
in. So only 9% of our revenue is from kids that walk up and buy their lunch?
Yes, ma'am.
Holy
Wow.
smokes.
Well, and the buy a regular lunch, the a la carte also is 15%.
Right.
The ice cream.
I wonder though, is that their lunch? Like when I went to school, that was my lunch. I walk up and get a fruit punch and a Little Debbie. That's what I ate. Or is this,
No, we
they
don't
get a
have those
lunch?
any longer.
I know we're all shocked, right? Since I just put down our version.
Okay, today would be a whole grain muffin
Thank you.
and
Yes.
a water bottle.
In
And a water
1990
bottle.
at Satellite High, you could get a fruit punch for $1 and a Little Debbie snack for $1.
Those days have since gone.
So
Well,
my question
well,
is.
let's qualify that. To participate in the federal lunch program, those days have ended. If we were to not use these subsidies,
You could have a Debbie.
we could have Debbie's, but it would
We
we'd
would have
not
to
be
increase
able
our
to.
fees by 70%.
Correct. So the only reason we're
The
able
Little
to
Debbie
offer
would be
such,
$42.
and they would not meet the current health standards that are out there.
Can we
Because
get- can we
it's
get-
all regulated. How did I do,
Wow.
Karen?
He's
See,
impressive.
I didn't forget too much.
The a la carte, though, what I'm trying to understand
Yeah,
is
I
the a
wanna
la
try the
carte,
carte,
is
too.
that me? Is that the person that walked up and just bought an a la carte banana? Or is that someone who got a lunch and now wants a banana too? Is there any way we track that? Or?
The a la carte represents a single item purchase, such as, it could be a chicken sandwich, it could be a slice of pizza, it could be any of those
So it could be their
items.
lunch.
Could be their lunch, yes.
Would it be on top of, okay, so they get, I'm asking a question because I'm,
You're asking the same
At-
thing.
I am,
He doesn't
At the
know.
high school level, we do a ton of a la carte
I was thinking
sales.
high school, but I'm thinking in elementary, do they do it? Okay,
Elementary, it's just like
It's
ice
bottled water,
cream
ice
and-
cream, chips.
okay.
So
Or mix it.
24% of our revenue is paid out of cash, people.
Yes.
That's money collected at the register,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Student participation comparisons, you can see that the after-school snacks and super snacks are just a small part of that. Obviously, the biggest portion of that is that light blue category, which is lunch. This is the slide that if you were to total that up in the far right column, you'd come to 10 million meals per year. Now, I think Ms. Campbell mentioned something about Big Macs earlier. Years ago on McDonald's signs, they used to say, so many million served. Well, this gentleman does 10 million a year. He doesn't even have the sign to show it.
56,000 a day.
We'll make
Okay.
a sign.
Where's Mr. Reed?
All right,
Good
and
shot.
so some of what he does with that is reinvest back into cafeterias.
Oh, he's
And,
such a good guy.
So you've seen a number of those cafeterias recently. I was down at O'Galley High School a few months ago, and just amazing what they did down there for both the kitchen and the cafeteria. But you can see the total on this slide is 22 million. I said it correctly
$1
today.
million,
I got
yes.
that wrong, Mr. Reed. $22 million reinvested in our cafeterias. Now, this is the slide that causes me heartburn. Here we're looking at the red being expenses versus the green over the last few years. And of course, you see that red going up and up and up, but the green's not catching up with it. And so, if you notice toward the bottom there, you have this bright blue color that stays even. Now, those are the unreserved, the reserved fund balance, which is actually inventory, Kevin explained to me. But the grayish blue is the actual fund balance, and you can see what's happening there where, as I used to say as a math teacher, we're on an asymptote approaching the x-axis. In other words, it's going down to zero.
That was
That's
just
not
for me.
good. Did that for you, Dr. Mo.
I'm like, I need a definition of the isotope again.
Asymptote. That's a curve that approaches a line but never actually touches it. But it's getting closer and closer to zero is the
So,
point.
yes, one of the things is that Ms. Stewart utilized more funding than she normally did. I remember she was taking funding out of food services. Is there a percentage, meaning that I noticed that not only is the red line going up, but the green line's going up too. So we're pulling more out every year past it. Does that make sense to you? Like, you're saying that the red line's going up, but the green line's also going up significantly. Is there have we increased the amount that we're taking away from your fund every year? Has that remained constant?
It's remained constant. I mean, we have, our indirect costs that we get hit with regards, that's a percentage base, but,
We don't do the same thing with food service that we do with Brevard Aftercare. We don't pull anything out of their enterprise for the district other than
Indirect costs.
indirect costs, which is
We
administration
did for
and maintenance?
We
Yeah.
did. We pulled for the armored car.
Well, there's
Yeah,
other
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Well,
no,
those are direct
that's-
costs, direct charges.
That's
Yeah.
because they collect money and they provide it. But the Armored Car Service provides a service to their cafeteria managers.
So the
They don't
trans-
have to go to the bank any longer either.
So there's transfers out every year that I see coming out of your enterprise fund. That is going to take care of those costs? Is that what that is? Because there's a transfer out every year that I see out of your funds, correct?
I'm not.
All right, I'll take a look.
Maintenance, some of those
Has-
maintenance, I mean,
It's probably capital.
The difference
Oh.
though between the green and the red, the revenue and the expenses, I see them going up, but it looks, I wish the numbers were on there because it looks about the same.
The numbers are down at the bottom.
Oh, thanks. I didn't see that. Well, I had that.
Too much
I had
job
it.
on that.
No, it was blocked. So the difference in percentage is what I was wondering.
It's going up $1 million in revenue. Expenses.
35 to 37, so there's 2 million by 20. There's still 2 million, oh, I guess 2.8 million.
Basically, every
21.
time, the way I see it, every time that green is below that red, you gotta take something off the grayish blue. And as you move down the line to the
That was
right.
a very sophisticated
Okay.
explanation, Ryan, thank you.
As you move down the right side, you notice every time the red's beating the green, and every time another
Yeah.
slice comes off the grayish blue. Well, if we keep taking off the grayish blue, we have no grayish blue left. And that's his fund balance. And his fund balance needs to be at about 3 months' worth of revenues in case of an emergency situation. And he's fast below that here in the next couple of years. So that's the reason that we're coming to you here today.
What are you paying to redo the cafeterias out of?
The fund balance.
Okay, so that's another reason the grayish blue is going
Sure.
down,
You
is
know,
to
If he
redo.
doesn't have that, he can't be doing those things for the cafeteria.
Keep in mind that that is also paying for renewal of his equipment.
Right.
Large coolers, what does a cooler cost? 100,000?
Tell me about that kettle you got. I couldn't believe the price of the kettle. I call it a big bowl.
I can't believe how old some of your stuff is. The mixer was from 1972
The mixers, you know,
those
or
actually-
something.
those are diehards, those are things that will way past us that aren't in our times. But a kettle, I mean, cafeteria equipment is expensive, it's all stainless steel, it's industrial strength. A kettle, a 60-quart kettle runs about $20,000. So anything we touch, it's just ching ching.
For a pot?
Or a pot that boils water.
So if I say-
Large.
Kettle.
very large.
We utilize it when we've got a water problem, and
Correct.
he actually boils
We
water.
boil the water there, that's what we use to
Oh, is that
clean
the one that's like the size of the floor? And
Yes.
when I did my Doskovich duty day, I
Yes.
remember that
There you
thing
go.
was intimidating because it was very hot and very,
Yes.
like, it's floor size, like bigger than.
A double stack oven's 23,000. I mean, it's incredible what the cost is associated with the equipment.
So when you're talking about the slide before, where you're talking about reinvestment, it's not just making University Park's cafeteria beautiful, you're also, that's the small side of the expenses, right?
Correct.
It is beautiful, but that just ain't a lot cheaper than a kettle.
So what do you want from us, Kevin?
Yeah, you wanna raise,
All right,
you
so
wanna
let's
raise.
get to the fun side. All right, so.
You prep, there's a need now.
There you
Tell
go.
us what
So
the-
we
give us
talked
a
about
pitch.
all the wonderful things that are going on. Bottom line here, we're looking at talking to you about a couple of revenue growth opportunities. The first of which is CEP expansion, the other one is lunch price increase. So let's take a look at CEP expansion. All right, so I had to have Kevin explain this to me a few times, so we'll see how I did. I did my oral exam, you correct me if I get anything incorrect, okay? CEP, Community Eligibility Provision. So when we talk about free and reduced lunch students, some of our students are direct certified, and some of our students have to fill out an application that's based on their parents' income. And either way, those two directions, they can be a free and reduced lunch student. But the community eligibility provision is a different way of providing free lunches. And several years ago, about 6 years ago, we started an experiment in this county. There are still 6 schools involved in this to this day. It started in 13-14, and those schools listed there, with the exception of Riverview Head Start, are still involved with CEP as a different way of funding their lunch, and 100% of the students in those schools get free lunch. So the eligibility requirements for CEP are on this next slide. The Fed says you have to have at least 40% of your kids on direct certification, but the sweet spot is at 62.5%. We're going to explain that in just a couple of minutes. And there's a couple other eligibility requirements there for CEP. And so what is direct certified? Direct certified is when students already are, and their families are already part of some type of federal program, such as the ones listed on this slide, SNAP or Medicare or extension of benefits, or they're on some type of a list from the district liaison for homeless, runaway, migrant, Head Start, foster child. Okay? So the sweet spot, as I said a second ago, was 62.5%. So what happens there is that, let's take an imaginary school. Let's say 62% of the kids in that school are direct certified. They're in one of those programs on the previous slide. There might be another 20% that fill out the application for free and reduced lunch. You put those two together, and that school would be an 82% free and reduced lunch school. The thing is, there's another 18% of kids in that example that aren't getting a free lunch. They might deserve one, but their parents didn't fill out the form for some reason. There's lots of reasons why parents might not fill out forms. In this situation, if 62.5% of a school is already direct certified, and if we claim this as a CPE school, like the 6 that we already have in the Brevard Public Schools, district managed schools, elementary schools, the feds give you a 1.6 multiplier, and 1.6 times 62.5 is 100%. So that other 18% that I was talking about in my example, they would get free lunch too at a school that has this situation. So, number of obvious benefits on this slide. Every elementary student that walks through and gets a lunch just gets his lunch. He doesn't pay for it. There's no account balance that's negative. There's none of that type of thing going on. Every kid gets a lunch. And then we have some considerations, and we had an opportunity to meet with a number of folks, some of which are sitting behind me here. And one of the big considerations was Title I funding, because Title I funding is tied to free and reduced lunch status. And what we found was that there's this pot of money for Title I, and it's distributed out according to your free and reduced lunch status or your CEP status. And something peculiar happened there, and I'm going to allow a couple of our Title I folks that would like to speak to that. I'm going to put Dan on the spot there, he can explain that. But a number of our charter schools got involved in CEP this last year, and it had an effect on our other schools, besides the 6 that we've had, who've also had this benefit for the last 6 years. But Dan, can you briefly tell us what happened there?
Yeah, what happens, when you on CEP, you take your direct certified kids population enrollment number, you times that by that 1.6 multiplier. So basically, it increases your school population to total enrollment. So in a Title I aspect, then your funding obviously went from 62% to 100% because with that CEP multiplier, that 1.6 also counts in our Title I funding. And later on, I'll probably show the slide on the effect of that, but that's the fast answer on how it's a huge impact in Title I funding. Because it pretty much puts your population to 100% of your kids now receive that per pupil allocation for Title I, which is a lot of money.
So basically, in that example that I just given, before that school was an 82%, and then the next year they jump up to 100%, they get a bigger slice of the Title I fund as a result of that.
Yeah.
And the last several years, we've had 6 of our schools that have benefited from that, but we've also had a number of charter schools that have jumped into that.
Right,
as well,
they've actually called them charter schools and recruited on the Title I side, and we've had all but one go on CEP. So now it's pulling money from, because Title I is really basic, a one pot of money, say 18,000.
Can I correct it? It's a fixed pot of money.
Right.
That's what
I'm
makes
saying.
it's a fixed amount of money, but you have more students qualifying for the allocation of Title I distribution, separate completely of what our food service is about.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So we don't get more Title I funds if we have more Title I kids.
No, that's why that's so important, what he just said.
Correct.
X amount of money, now we have to distribute it out depending on how many free reduced lunch kids there are.
So when one of our charter schools does this,
Mhm.
we have to give them a bigger pot of the
Correct,
money.
we base the PPA on the number
they're
of qualified
smart, aren't
kids,
they?
so
So
with
is
that
that why
multiplier.
when we've seen the numbers sometimes, for example, Odyssey,
Odyssey,
and
I
the free
think
and
it's
reduced lunch is
110.
over 100%?
Yeah,
Is that for that?
110%.
Okay.
Because the percentage
Thank you.
also goes up, when you times that 1.6, the state ranks them over 100% with that multiplier.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So for food services, it remains constant, a pot of money that no matter what, we're receiving from the state the same amount of money, or do we put that money into that pot at the
Two
same?
different topics. Now we're talking about Title I, which isn't food services. Okay, so it's not food services money, it's
Yeah.
Title I money, but it's
Yeah.
based on free and reduced lunch status.
Yes, understand that. So the same pot of money every year that we get is based in food services, is what you're saying, or in Title I in general?
I think what he's saying is if
So-
we make this change with our food services, it's going to affect our Title I funding that goes into our schools. So we just need to be careful, because if we make this change to benefit our food nutrition, F&S program, it could have positive and negative impacts on
Sure.
our schools with their
So,
education funding.
quick question then, at a school like Roy Allen, who lost their Title I funding, and they're only like barely a percentage, is there a cost breakdown of Title I funds going to different schools?
No,
Does
because
that
our
make sense?
threshold cutoff is 63%, they fell below that.
Mhm.
So in the projected, we just got the survey grade, they're not gonna make it again, so they're not meeting that threshold to qualify for Title I services on the elementary side.
And is
So
that
just a-
threshold still established by us, or is that threshold established by the?
Right now, we're, based on our state application, we're stuck on the 15, 16 threshold, that's what our Title I schools were set at, which was 63 for elementary and 74 for high school, or secondary. So right now, yeah, we're sitting at that 63, 74 threshold.
So, and I don't mean to keep going back to that, but we saw a spike in Title I based on the hurricane, right?
Correct.
Can you explain what that anomaly was? Why is it all of a sudden? Was that because the income from the people had dipped below enough because of the hurricane days out? Or is it just that they literally filled out the forms like they should have?
No, that was where they applied for assistance
Yeah.
at a
So those are
booth.
the percentage of people that we could target to get there. And meaning, here's my question is that in schools like Roy Allen, is there a possibility that we can find a way to get them to fill out the forms more often? Does that make sense to you? Because if they're that close, there might be an opportunity to get them above that with that percentage that's there. What do we have in place to do that?
That's, I'll jump in, but that's basically at a school now, food and nutrition services will support and help the school that's on that margin because, it benefits the school and so on. But ultimately, the schools put, as a former principal of a Title I school who wanted to keep it, we worked very hard to make sure our families filled out the form, and my staff would call, and you were qualified last year, you qualify again this year, we need you to fill out the form. So if they can get their population up to the threshold, then they qualify. CEP has nothing to
No, I
do
know,
with
I know. I was just on the back
Title I
end.
qualify.
Is there a playbook that we give the schools to do it, or is it just up to each one of the principals to try to go out and aggressively do it?
Every Title I principal I've ever known is pretty aggressive with it.
Yeah, we had conversations about
Okay.
that, that's not a good.
And we launched the mobile app this year,
Yeah,
this last month
which is
too,
awesome.
so
Thank
this-
you.
so they can apply over the phones.
Thank you.
So you're saying that there's potential for 18 schools to be negatively impacted because more of the Title I funding would go to those schools that would be the CEP schools?
And 22 schools would have additional Title I funding. And so amongst the elementary Title I schools, it would be a more fair distribution than what it currently is.
It would be more fair.
Yes, sir.
Because theoretically, the 6 or 7 schools that we have participating in CEP for 6 years now have been getting a little disproportionate share of Title I at the cost of other schools not getting as much. That makes sense.
It would just get worse if we added more CEP schools, yes?
We're targeting the Title I schools only in this arena.
It would redistribute the funds based on all Title I schools, not just this little cluster of schools that qualify.
Okay. So what's the negatives?
All right. We also talked about E-rate, and Russell and his group assured us that this wouldn't affect E-rate, which was important to us. We talked about gifted identification, and Jane said that's not going to be a problem. The one outstanding thing that needed to be addressed was just to make sure that when we look at subgroup data, that we realize that free reduced lunch status could be changed a little bit. And so, no problem. Talk with Nate about that? Okay.
You know, before we leave the slide, just to answer your question directly, Ms. Descovich, the only negative is that some schools will lose some Title I funding from one year to the next, including some charter schools. And it's not by virtue of not giving it to them, it's that the distribution of those funds gets spread out across, you know, more schools. But Title I deal with that every year, like the Roy Allen. Some lose it completely. Others, their population goes down, so there is adjustments to Title I funding.
So if you are at 60% free and reduced, you get 0 Title I funds, even though 60% of your students are, and that is.
And then that is reallocated.
Correct.
That's what's tough.
There's still 60% of your students that have those same needs. That is.
They went from a C to an A, and now it's perfect.
Can I ask about the CEP? So the CEP, so when you're saying that some of the students on CEP sites will not have free and reduced status,
We don't, no longer require the application to be
Okay.
filled out. So it's an opt-in. If they fill it out, it's a family application. So if they have a sibling that's going to a middle school, they would fill out the application, and those statuses would be sent
would
out
be
to those.
transferred?
Would
Okay.
transfer them to the
So
kids.
would the CEP schools also be a Title I school then, automatically, or no?
Not necessarily. We could have, you know, things could change. That would always be looked at on an annual basis. What we're proposing today is looking at our Title I grouping of schools and how that would looking at it as of today, knowing that that could change. Again, this is where we'd be more equitably distributed the funds. So it would be a more equal approach for how we're looking at the schools and how they're getting the funds allocated to them.
So would you get rid of CEP?
Would we get rid of CEP?
So what was the question?
Would we get rid of CEP if they fell off
Would
the
you
Title
get rid
I?
of the CEP program?
I don't think so. I think it would be it's a 4-year cycle.
Right.
So they would necessarily be qualified for that 4-year period, and then at the end of the 4-year cycle, we would be looking at to see if they would fall off.
Okay.
Or roll off.
So if they become a CEP school, what does that mean about the food? Is there more federal requirements now all of
No.
a sudden? Are they
It's
more
an
whole wheat,
no.
more?
It's an extension of the National School Lunch Program, and it's just a means to be able to feed kids. It's just another option to
You
consider.
can still have a la carte stuff there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
The issue that we may run into,
There's gotta be some downsides and you guys aren't telling me, so I'm.
One of the downsides is that when we look at the schools that are negatively impacted, one of those is Cocoa High School. Okay, because we're not looking at secondary schools to do this. And so Cocoa High School as a Title I school is not going to be part of the CEP. And so they would be definitely one of those schools that would be negatively impacted by a change in the redistribution of the set pot of money in Title I.
Correct.
the other thing that we could potentially face is we know that statistically elementary students, elementary parents are more likely to fill out the free and reduced application. So anecdotally, if you have an elementary student and you have a middle school student or a high school student and your elementary school student is at a CEP school, your high school student doesn't want to be identified as free and reduced lunch eligible necessarily, the parent may be less likely to be willing to do the application because there's no need for the elementary school student.
Yes, it looks like
But it-
several of the schools that are zoned for that, for Cocoa, are already in that program, right? Saturn,
Four of them
Endeavor,
are. Four.
So they're just impacted even more.
the whole
if it's-
Cocoa feeder chain.
So it won't impact them.
But they can still apply. One way they can apply, we could also pick them up as a direct certification for the other schools too. So there's multiple qualifiers that are out there with regards that you don't have to necessarily fill out an application. Once we receive that report down to direct certification, we're currently doing that now with being able to get statuses from the state. Applying those trump an income application for statuses for the children. So The DC is a multiplier or a qualifier for the program no matter what. And that status would be applied for that student attending any school in Brevard County.
Can I ask you a quick question on the DC?
Uh,
There was something that I was reading this week that I think it was the US Department of Education was changing an accounting practice that they had been allowing schools to identify as Title I based on applications for free and reduced lunch, but that statutorily, I believe statutorily, they were technically supposed to be basing eligibility on like census data or something. And so it was at the federal level, and they were indicating that there was going to be a huge impact to Title I eligibility. Have you guys heard anything about that?
Dan just went to the.
Yeah, we just had a national conference, I didn't hear anything on that.
Okay. I'll see if I can find the article, just to where they were, supposedly Congress was gonna try and fix it, but we'll see.
All right, the next slide talks about participation in Florida. 53% of districts, oh, I'm sorry, 73% of the districts do have some type of CEP. Of those, 53% are 100% at their district. And then we have a number of specific counties and the percentage of CEP in those counties. Right now, our county's at 7%. If we were to go forward with this proposal, we'd be at 36%. And this is a list on the next slide of the additional schools that potentially could go CEP. This would be dependent upon some data that comes forward on April the 1st, is that right? Correct, yes, sir. But from what we're looking at now, it looks like these might be the names of the schools that we could add in this category. Add 24 for a total of 30 district-managed elementary schools to the program. Other questions on CEP?
If they're not close to the sweet spot, then is there a downside of that, or is that going to be less than what it's costing us right now?
We'll do the cost analysis of that. Even if they're below the 62.5, you drop in the 50, the high 50 range, it's still advantageous financially to do that. It is not advantageous at 40%. We would lose money at the 40% level of the DC qualifier.
All right, we're going to move on to lunch price overview. We haven't had a lunch price increase since 2014. Right now, our elementary lunch price is $1.80, which is the lowest in the state. Our secondary price is $1.90, which is the second lowest in the state. The state average is at $2.12 for elementary and $2.53 and $2.56 for middle and high school, respectively. As we look at neighboring districts, we see their lunch prices on the screen.
Osceola at $2.40, Pasco $2.50.
I bet they have good food.
We have good food.
Thank you.
Maybe so
Ms.
saltines.
Sometimes.
As you're eating saltines over there.
I know, you didn't bring
What
me
is the
any.
standard of good food for eating saltines?
All right, and
So
so,
you're asking us if you can raise lunch prices? Is that where
Yes,
you're going?
ma'am.
Okay,
That's
just
where we're
checking.
going.
Just checking. Just checking.
Are we
Raise
still having
fee day?
chicken wing Wednesday?
Pardon me?
We're still having chicken wing Wednesday?
You betcha.
Okay.
It's one of our popular participation days.
Kickin' Chicken is rivaling Popeye's price.
You should check out the kickin' chicken.
And you didn't bring us any kickin' chicken.
Can you get them ready for tonight? Our meeting's
It's
at
3:55.
No pressure.
All right, current revenue and meal
okay,
costs.
so the federal government gives Mr. Thornton $3.50 for free lunch. They give him $3.10 for reduced lunch. The kids pay the other 40 cents. And even for the paid lunch, they give you 41. But when you add that 41 to the $1.80, you're at 221. And so the meal cost of the direct labor for this cafeteria staff and for the supplies, the food itself, is $233. That doesn't count all the other overhead that he takes care of for us. But you can see there's a 12-cent deficit there in that situation, 32 for secondary school. I'm going to let Mr. Thornton talk to you about PLE briefly.
This is the lunch, paid lunch price equity. This is mandated by Healthy Hungry Free Kids Act of 2010. That's looking at schools to make sure that we're not charging less for school meals than its cost to produce the meal.
That's an interesting law. It
It's
sounds like we're violating it.
We are. It's intended, it's intended to make sure that federal funds for free and reduced price lunches are not supporting the price meal. And that's where, if you look at that previous slide, we are dipping into what it's costing us. It's costing us money to operate or feed the paid students with regard to that operation. If you look at the comparison down there, what does that mean? The PLE requires districts to look forward to setting paid lunch prices at the federal reimbursement level. It's at $3.50, the free rate minus the $1.40, excuse me, the 41 cents. The paid rate, which is a $3.09. That's the target that the Feds is looking for us to be at. Our current weighted price is $1.83. So, as like I said in the previous slide, we're 12 cents shy on the elementary, 32 cents shy on the secondary. And so the bottom line is, and in order to be in compliance with this, our paid lunch price needs to cover a minimum of what it costs to make a meal, and work toward the $3.09 point there.
And we're only talking about the 9%.
9%?
The people
Only
who buy
9%
lunch.
of our people are actually buying lunch.
Oh, yeah, because you adjust your à la carte prices wherever you want, right? Like those are,
Yes,
so this is just the basic lunch cost.
this is basic lunch price.
So we have several different options. One is status quo, do nothing, and this is the same slide we saw back on page 13. This is where the fund balance approaches zero. We don't want to do that. Option B, we affectionately call this the rip the Band-Aid off option. But this would raise the prices of lunches to just below the state average, so that elementary would be at $2.10, secondary would be at $2.50. In addition to the CEP, and you can see what it does to our fund balance over the course of the next couple of years, and it puts it steady and at a place where it needs to be approximately between 2 and 3 months worth of expenses. Options C and D do the same thing, but over a 2-year or a 3-year plan. And so this last slide talks about is the summary of those things. And so we're interested in the board's opinion.
So what I want to know is, so monthly, if you rip the Band-Aid off, parents' monthly costs go from, I'm guessing 20 lunches a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Times 30 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't feel like much of a Band-Aid, it might be
$6.
a month.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, wait. Like,
For 9% of our people.
you're not Dr. Mullins. How did that happen?
Yeah. She had a talk on call, yeah.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, I was looking at the last year's budget.
Yes, sir.
And it's got transfers out at 2.3 million, capital outlay at 2.39 million, increase to this year's budget from 17-18 to 18-19. I'm sorry, from 2 years ago, from 2.3 million in capital to 3.43 in capital. But then there's still a transfer of 1.5 million. That's, when I look at your transfers that I was talking about, there seems to be in every adopted budget going back 6 years, when I was looking, there's a $1.5 million transfer out, and there's also the expenses of the capital outlay. So I think that's where my mind was going for the transfers. But what you're saying is that $1.5 million transfer, or the 2.3 or whatever, is based upon coming back into your organization on capital outlay.
The transfer to capital projects, you talking about line 930?
It's the budget, it doesn't have a line item on it, I'm sorry. I'm looking at what we presented to the state. It just has capital outlay 2.3 million, transfers out 2.31 million, totally different lines from 2017-18.
Right.
And then the adopted budget for 18-19.
What I believe that is that's why I'm transferring that capital money to Sue Han to do the capital projects for the school, the remodeling projects that we're doing.
And Sue is
So-
saying yes.
And so that money, that 1.5 or 2.3 is going to you, and then the capital budget that he has inside is a totally other project that he's doing himself.
That's
Okay.
internal, yes.
That's where I'm seeing that transfer, that's what I was
Yes.
asking about. Perfect, thank you.
So, Mr. Novelli and Mr. Thornton need direction from the board. Cheryl, would you like to weigh in? Or you want me to start over here with Katie this time?
Start with Katie this time.
Ms. Campbell?
Why do we always start with me?
I'm
I
sorry,
started with
last time.
Cheryl last time.
Ms. Belford, if I may, one more question before we weigh in. And if I may, to the ladies in the back, is there anything that we're missing about a negative to this? Because I think we need to weigh in on the CEP stuff also. And I don't want to leave
Are
here.
you
be
talking
like-
to Jane and Stephanie
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you say ladies in the
Yeah,
back?
like, well, I guess I could have been Sue. I didn't see you, Sue. So, yeah. Is there any negatives to this?
We've analyzed it every which way. We've talked to testing and accountability about subgroups. We looked at the gifted and how we make sure a student is, if we can have them fill out a paper if they haven't, if they don't qualify for direct certification. Dan has analyzed it every which way as far as the impact, negative and positive.
For secondary, I think you guys keyed in on the concerns, so.
On the what?
Concerns, I think you guys mentioned already, obviously, when you're one pie, some get bigger pieces than they got, and some people get smaller pieces. And so our non-CEP schools will get smaller pieces. You know, in secondary, that's dramatically purple high school, but potentially we've got schools right on the edge. Ms. Belford knows our trust at Madison, and some other potential downfalls there, just their slice of pie gets smaller. And then, will it de-incentivize applications at the secondary level? I don't know that's a reason not to do it. That's the potential things you guys have mentioned, both of those things already.
Okay.
Maybe if we increase the cost, there'll be more applications for free and reduced lunch.
I'm sorry.
I'm serious.
That's true.
If you increase the cost, maybe some people say, you know what?
I'll apply for free and reduced lunch.
Yes.
because
Again,
no.
the pies gets.
It's still pie is the pie.
The pie is the pie is the pie.
You can't cut it any other
Yeah,
way.
but it'll help us in other areas.
Yeah.
Might move some.
Maybe.
Okay.
Ms. Campbell?
Every option besides don't do anything, which doesn't look good, includes a CEP, so I'm assuming that you're recommending that strongly. I always prefer a step up, usually, than rip the Band-Aid off. So, kinda like D.
Mr. Susan?
So I'm looking at the two options, option C and option D. And in both options, it shows a progression. In option D, it shows us matching in 2021 our revenue all the way through. Is that going to be consistent that our expenses meet our revenue numbers all the way through if we continue that? Because over here it shows 21 we're up, 22 we're up, these are equal. Does that mean that eventually the expenses are going to outgrow the revenue again?
Yes, I mean,
You see what I mean?
there's several unknowns, I don't control what raises we provide to staff.
Sure.
That's a major,
So we're going to have to come back in 23 is what you're saying?
Right, I mean,
Okay.
we'd be looking at, I can't say we're gonna go another 6 years without another price increase. We've been
Yeah.
very fortunate the way we've been able to operate, we've been able to tighten the budget as tight as we can.
Sure.
And that we are trying to do more with less with regards to what we have to offer. So likelihood right now, we should be able to get through 3 years. We can control expenses. We may not be able to do as much in the remodeling projects as we were doing in the past. I mean, there's all those variables. I also don't know if there's going to be additional charges to food service from the operating side. Those are all unknowns that I've got to plan and account for at some point in time with regards to how to build the budget. And, another $500,000 expense is tough to overcome.
I would like to go to the 2-year plan to get the revenue in as opposed to 3 years to spread it out.
All right, Katie wants 3, Matt wants 2, Ms. Deskovich.
And I'm not a strong, like, I said down, very D, I mean, like C or D.
You could go C or D. Mr. Susan thinks C. Ms. Deskovich.
Well, I think that ripping the Band-Aid off at $6 a month increase, I'm okay with that. If there's enough of you that are okay with that, if not, I think the 2 years fine. I think 3 is a little unnecessary.
My turn. So I have a question. So if we go with option C, will we be still under what the federal government requires us?
For fund balance,
Yeah.
we should maintain. You'll notice that we're currently, we'll trend at about $7.8 million.
Well, I was thinking what it costs us to serve the meal. So,
Yeah.
Oh, the law
the
that
law,
provides it.
if it costs,
Oh, we will still be under it.
I don't like being under
So
we've
we're
been under
still
for 6
violating?
years, and
Well,
now we'll be under
We're not,
again.
we won't be violating because we moved forward. As long as we're moving forward, that's a path forward to showing that we're making changes. We
At
may
the
have
end
to-
of the 2 years, we're still violating now, or the end of the 3 years,
I
we're
have
still.
such- I have
We're
to
still-
too.
We would have to go to $2.33 minimum and $2.63 minimum. That would be a pretty big jump from $1.90 and $1.80. Well, the secondary works.
Yeah, but they'll go to McDonald's and pay all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm just saying, so I am, but,
She wants to rip the Band-Aid
I
off.
really want us to be compliant, and so I am more invested in B, but I could do C.
Alrighty. Do you all have a preference?
I do.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I don't want to do D because that's just an ongoing,
Right.
price perpetual piece. And, we will drop some participation because some folks will get tired of not wanting to pay the extra. So, the easier flow in is either ripping the Band-Aid off or the 2-year plan.
So you're not helping us, though. You're just giving
I would
us
prefer
the
the
two
rip
options
Band-Aid
we
off.
need.
Let's just move forward.
Are you all diabolically opposed to ripping the Band-Aid off, Mr. Susan, Ms. Campbell?
I'd love to amend it and go to a 3-year on the 2-year plan. To
What?
bring it-
What?
So increase it again a 3rd year. So you have
Oh,
your
to
2-year
get,
plan.
so we're equal to.
But if you get it to your 3rd, it would
Oh, I see what you're
suffice
saying.
her. So
You mean do 50?
you have a 2 and a 3-year plan. Why not just make a 3-year out of the 2-year and increase again a 3rd year to bring you into where Ms. McDougal wants to be?
Oh, the 15 cents?
Just
So
keep
we
going,
redid the
because you
2.
look at the state averages, and I love the fact that we're in the state average,
Yeah.
but that's average, right? And we are not average. We're Brevard. We provide better food, better product, and everything else.
We have
Let's
chicken
move
wings
from a
and
2-year to a 3-year increase of the same routine to bring you where you need to be, so that we don't have to keep doing this over and over again and coming back to the table, squeezing you. You do an amazing job, so that's what I would like to amend and make the proposal to do, to bring it in line with Ms. McDougal.
Because we haven't increased this for 6 years, you said?
6.
Okay. Just want to make sure that's on the record.
And I want to plug that since I've been on the board, he's increased the quality of chicken from seed grade chicken to A grade chicken, and that wasn't a cheap thing. And he's been eating the costs of that, and he's put real live chicken wings and chicken legs. I
Not
think,
live,
and
not live.
not live, but they were a chicken. They're not some processed styrofoam stuff that came out, and that costs money. Real, I don't want to say
I-
real chicken, but.
I'm not opposed to moving to option B. I wouldn't really want us to say right now that we're gonna continue, if we do an option B, then that leaves us in 2 years, let's come back, and if we need to move forward again, then we can. The thing about option B is, we can look at this data and see, wow, we're the lowest in the state, or the second lowest in the state, but our parents don't know that. The 9% of them.
Yeah, the 9% that are.
I do like what Mr. Sisson was saying about
Let's make the
3
plan
years,
now.
Or just a 1-year
Yeah,
to a 2-year and
right.
add the extra stuff on it.
15 cents, so.
I'm tired of nickel and diming, especially when we're in that situation. Let's just get this stuff done.
So let's propose an option E and see how you guys feel about that. Option E, sorry, Mr. Kevin.
No worries.
Mr. Kevin.
I couldn't think of his last name. Thank you, Thornton. Option E is rip the Band-Aid off with the second year of bring us into legal compliance of where Ms. McDougal recommended. Is that what you were saying, Mr. Susan?
Not exactly.
Well,
but-
It's essentially a
You say do
45
option
cent
C,
increase, just
D,
depending on if you want to do it on 2 or 3 years.
Right.
If you
2
want to do
years
a
or 3 years?
45-cent increase over 3 years, or a 45-cent increase over 2 years is what we're getting
I do
at.
it to 3 years, 15
And
cents, 50
Mr.
cents, 15 cents.
Do you think that, what would be better for you guys, a 45 cents over 2 years or a 45 cents over 3 years? Mr. Thornton, and what's palpable for our population to continue to do? What would you
He's
recommend?
like, none of these were my options.
I thought we had enough options. So you're saying do
Lest
option
you
B
underestimate this board, Mr. Thornton.
and have a 30-cent increase, and then the following year we'd come back with another 15?
Or option C, where you would just go
15,
15, 15, and 15. Either way. I just want you in compliance for a while, but I know you like to be by yourself over there and not bother us.
So, you know, that cost actually might go up and then we just.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Right.
But still, it puts us on a long-term plan to fix the problem instead of a
While you're
long-term
thinking
plan
about that,
to
can I ask
almost
our-
kind of fix the problem.
Dr. Sullivan or Ms. Klein, do you guys have any input as to our increase affecting any of the individuals inside of our schools that you'd like to recommend?
It's 9%.
Well, it for sure will affect the individuals in our schools. Keep in mind the threshold for Title II for secondary is higher. So all Title I schools, 60 to 70%ers, there's not any funding for those schools. And so they have a lot of students that are in that in-between stage there, and that is going up for them. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, to make the choice that we find is most financially responsible.
I mean, I'm okay with B. I mean, if you guys want to do B, I'm okay with B. I'm not so okay with,
B is working.
oh, I mean C, I'm sorry, didn't C. Forgot A is nothing. But, I'm okay with C, but I really don't want to go for, D.
So are you saying C with an extended year option to bring them in compliance with what you said? So 15, 15, 15?
C is 15.30, and then we would add that extra to get us up to, look at 15 right now. Increase for elementary is, it's 15 cents for elementary, 30 cents for secondary. We're just focusing on elementary. For secondary, it would be 30.
69.
I'd rather do C.
That's almost $1
You wanted
increase.
Hey, might have to go back.
I'd rather do C as is and come back in 2 years, because there's a lot of things that we don't know now. And it's,
I don't think anyone was opposed to C, right?
Right.
Right.
All right, C. But before you go, I have to mention one thing to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Mullins and I were at Astronaut High School with their student government group a week or two ago, and several of the students expressed concern at the availability of Kickstart in the vending machines. They said that they would be better off with like caffeine and Coke than the Kickstart because it's an energy drink.
I want to caution this, the Kickstart that you're seeing in the vending machine is vastly different than what you're seeing at the retail store.
Okay.
The caffeine quantity, or the quantity of caffeine in those cans at the school level meet the criteria from the smart snack requirements. And the caffeine level is dropped compared to what you're currently seeing there. So if you would like me to show you the difference between the two labels, the nutrient labels on those, we can show you those because it's vastly different.
Okay.
It is not, and that is not an energy drink. What we're offering in those vending machines is not an energy drink.
Okay, if you could send that to me, that would be awesome,
That'd be
because I have to see those students like every time I go to Publix.
It is totally different than the product that we're offering than what you're seeing at the Jiffy Mart or Wawa's or.
like the
those
Doritos
places.
that you offer,
Okay.
like half of
Yes,
that and half.
yes, absolutely.
We fought that battle.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton, thank you, Mr. Novelli.
My pleasure.
We appreciate you all working through our 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon workiness.
We almost derailed you, but we ended up
Ms.
going with one of your.
But we have to make it quick.
Okay,
Yeah, go.
okay, I want to talk to Kevin on the way up.
Right? He's like,
likes to be on your
but
radar.
next time he comes, he's bringing
I'll bring
chicken.
Kicking chicken.
Kicking chicken, we're waiting.
What about our Tuesdays? We're gonna do a thing?
And we're
Try
gonna
it
pick
Tuesday.
up one
Broccoli
try it
and-
Tuesday.
Whatever it is. So, my friend calls me when I'm in college and he says, you gotta literally became a mascot for it.
Are you
And
running this
half
right,
the
Rob?
time
Just
they
here?
it's like taking a chicken. So I got a free bowl of chicken for this field. So every time I say looking for chicken, I go back to Illinois.
Too funny.
I'll jump in on it.
Jump on the number.
Alrighty.
Get her started.
You know what the other
What do you want to finish by?
5:25.
Okay, we're flying through it, no discussion, no questions.
Yeah, we just need time for a potty break before we go into the boardroom. I would love to have some kickin' chicken, but
You know, Kevin Thornton fell down on that particular job. He did not bring it, so
I know.
we shouldn't have given him anything that he wanted.
We're not gonna see him. I mean, we only see him once a year. He loves to hide, loves standing with the radar.
Yeah,
Penny stole money from him. No, she did. Not stole money, transferred money.
I bet. Yes, I shared, Mr. McCullough, somebody posted, I don't know if it was Mr. McCullough or somebody else, but they posted on their Facebook page, so.
Is your director
Okay. Awesome, thank you. I didn't. Because I got on a phone call and others going.
Tell what you got.
Tap out. Get that sugar out.
Is that what it is?
Just have banana, Mr. Gibbs.
Yeah, so I'm identified.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Doing well.
In like Sherwood, you know what I mean? There's a lot of details that
Tell our bus drivers that we appreciate them.
Yes, I know. You have a whole extra.
That last update about,
Into this room.
was that yesterday's update? Did you get the same updates we did?
Yes, ma'am.
Like, usually it's like all these problems with school buses, and then there's like 1 or 2 bus issues, but yesterday's update was like 9 buses, like major, like.
The one coming from, customer care, all incidents.
Yeah, like, no, I was like, oh, bus drivers, like, they,
from Phil's students.
yes. And there was a bunch, I was,
You haven't had enough sweets.
really, I just ate it.
Whole Hershey bar.
I know, I'm just figuring you have a sweet, it's bigger than you.
Huge house that
Just a chocolate too. It's not really
Mrs. Daskovich, but I think.
You're not done yet? Even Cheryl's done.
I'm at 9 1/4.
I'm finished, Cheryl's finished.
We have till May.
I know, but you gotta get moving.
Last week was a rough.
I'm procrastinating.
I'm at 9 1/4.
Are you done? You're done for 25.
Yeah, but I think Cheryl started
See,
early.
Cheryl's done, I'm done.
Cheryl started early.
I bet Marcus.
No, I didn't start early. I waited. I mean, I could have started early, but I just did it. On Saturdays, I do a lot.
teachers, they just
I did like almost 3 on Saturday.
And yesterday I did 2.5.
Don't you envy me?
Yes.
Oh, and now Katie goes. All right, 3-minute warning.
I think she's just coming to get a goodie.
2-minute warning.
What time is it? We have a 2-minute warning? Okay, good.
Mr. Gibbs, how was your banana?
Did you guys break out the pastries over there?
I'm dying.
My sister,
This is gonna be what?
Loads of fun.
I went through it, because you sent it early.
I think that means to do the Cliff's Notes version.
Yeah.
other
I'm
stuff
gonna
got
talk
sent
very,
early
very
too,
quickly,
and-
but before we start, we're gonna let Dr. Miller share some good, fun news.
Yes. Ms. Jesovich just said to make sure that I tell the bus drivers that they do a great job. And I have a pin here for Michael McKenzie. He is a bus driver from Quest. About 2 weeks ago, I received a email from a parent just ranting and raving about how wonderful this man was, that she was on her way to work and he had stopped his bus to get out to help a mother and a son that had his foot caught in a bicycle. So she blocked the traffic so that they could deal with him. And she just said that, how wonderful and calm he was and what a good role model he had been. And so she really wanted to meet him. So we're going Thursday morning to Quest as soon as his run is finished. And we're going to present him with a pin and show it to me. And this is the 4th pin that I've been able to give in the last month for citizens complimenting our bus drivers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Now the sheriff sounds rival. Maybe we can start selling rival. I think they want to ride with us.
They always have something to do.
So we'll move on to regional busing, and I'm gonna
Thank you, Ms.
breeze through
Archer.
some of these. This is just a task force that it was cross-divisional between district operations, transportation services, equity, innovation, and choice. Our findings are divided into 2 areas, transportation efficiency and human capital efficiency. In the category under transportation efficiency, we were looking at the cost, benefits, runs, and impact on our fleet. In our cost, I'm going to let Robin run with this section of it.
So when we look at the additional cost to the district, we add that up, we're looking at approximately 1.6 million. Now that doesn't include non-drivers. That doesn't include the portion of regional bus miles. It's about 11.6% of all miles. And we're not including 11.6% of Dr. Miller's salary, or the supervisors, or the foreman, or the assistant foreman, or the routers, or the clerical staff, or any of the mechanics. We're not including any of those salaries, which really is a part of the bigger story. But when we talk about what we had to add in terms of money, or what we might get back out of, we're looking at 1.6 million approximately. And this last fall, when we had to turn into the state, we had 1,322 kids riding on the regional buses. And so we received from the state and FEFP about $580,000, which, as you can see there, is about 1/3 of the overall cost for regional busing. So the net cost to us is about $1 million. That also includes, by the way, in this particular study, the addition of another clerk in case, because the request here was to take a look at what would it look like if we were to charge for regional busing. And so in order to handle all of those accounts and charges, we added into this calculation an additional clerk. So it does include that. But other than that, it's just looking at bus drivers and then the direct costs for regional buses, such as parts, oil, tires, fuel, that type of thing. So if we divide that out, the net annual cost for the district for each student is about $780 and about $4.33 per child per day. And what I think Stephanie's handing out to you are some of the specifics of that spreadsheet that we use to calculate those. And if you have questions on that later on, we're glad to tell you how we came across that. But it's an approximation, a way of trying to determine what those costs are for what we're currently doing. Benefits, as you know, that provide equitable access to academic, educational programs, opportunities, or EPOs, as Stephanie likes to call them. Those include choice, magnet, CTE academies, and of course, IB and ACE. And we have a list there of the schools that are receiving students on regional buses. And you can see that a lot of schools are Most of our high schools are on that list, and then, of course, some of the choice elementary schools. And so, some of the factors that are important to understand is that this is an increase of 73 runs. There's 78 in the AM, 35 in the PM. And so there are a number of bus drivers. Most of the bus drivers that are involved in that are doing that job, and that's their only job. Others are doing this if they have a short regional run, and then they're also going out and hitting an elementary school or another school, and they're kind of a combo. But all told, we're looking at those 73 runs. Obviously, that's an increase of distance of runs over traditional runs. We have runs that go from Bayside High School to Freedom 7, or from somewhere in West Melbourne up to McNair. Some of these buses travel great distances. Extended travel time for students. And one of the things that has just been frustrating to all of us at the table here, we've all dealt with it, is this increase in number of delays, on-time arrival. We have delays both for regional bus kids themselves and for the other students that are not regional buses because of just the lack of bus drivers. What we have up on the chart, if you're interested in looking at it, is one of the things that we want to do regardless. If we continue to do regional busing, we took a look and examined some of the stops, and we found there were a lot of onesies and twosies, is what I call them. But there are places where the regional bus was stopping and picking up a single kid. And we don't do that with regular buses. We don't stop at a person's house and pick them up. You have kids congregate, and 5 to 10 of them get on at one time. And so Dr. Miller's routing specialist took a look at that and found a way to reduce the number of pickups so that more kids would be at each one, and it'd take less time for that bus to get to the school. So that would be something we would do regardless. Some other consequences, of course, increased wear and tear, 750,000 additional miles. It's kind of hard to believe, just for regional busing.
How many total miles do we go in here?
So total miles is 6,428,824.
6 million what?
6.4 million
That's right.
miles.
Second number on the sheet.
57,000 meals.
And so regional buses are about 11.65% of all the miles that we do.
Wow.
And of course, it increased the number of buses as well as the bus inspections and repairs we have to do. Obviously, we had to hire additional bus drivers in order to do regional busing, and yet we don't have all of our bus driver positions filled. And then transportation staff had to take on extra work because we didn't hire additional routers or supervisors or mechanics or foremen or anything like that. Some of the other things to consider on the screen there. And of course, we still face this challenge of hiring bus drivers. Increased demands on those folks that we didn't increase positions for. We already talked about reducing the number of stops. And so we took a look at what it would mean if we were to institute a regional bus fee. And based on the values that we'd come up there with, if we have $1 million worth of costs after the district receives the FEFP, and we divide that out by 1,322 kids, it comes to between $4 and $5 per day per student. So we started with that figure, $5 per day per student. Of course, we realize as soon as we charge anything, there won't be 1,322 anymore on the bus. There'll be a lot less, and so it's not going to add back up. The other thing that's really important to understand in this whole picture, and was several weeks ago, Dr. Miller made a call to his counterpart at the DOE, the Director of Transportation for the state, Mr. Manspeed, and asked him some very important questions. First of all, if we charge for busing, will we still be able to get the FEFP? As you we said earlier, that was amounted to about $580,000. So tell us a little bit about that story, Dr.
And so he told us that we would still be able to draw the FEFP if we charged. But he was a little concerned whether or not we could actually charge. So he said he was going to send it on up the ladder to get input from people higher up from him. And so
this gentleman, Josh Bemis, got involved.
Yes.
From the Educational Policy Director of Florida.
And so his word to us was to run it by our council here in Brevard. That it was up to the district to make that decision, that they would not make a decision one way or the other.
So he was a little surprised and at first thought, you can't charge for busing. But after being pressed over and over and over again, finally said, we need to speak to our attorney.
Did you get that in an email, or was that over the phone?
He mentioned that we got that information just Friday afternoon, finally. And
Did you ask
Mr.
Mr.
Gibbs
Gibbs?
has been informed of that comment for
About
Neil
Monday morning.
on Monday.
Today's Tuesday, do you have an
Got
answer?
one day to So that's kind of still out there. We need to keep that in mind in this whole discussion. But moving on, if we were to charge $5 a day and we were to do that for a semester, I'll let Stephanie Archer talk about the registration fee and process.
So we were going to use something very similar that we already do for our online application for EPOs and have Scribbles design an online registration opportunity. And I've already talked to Scribbles and they could do that. They would assess us the $5 fee for every application. So this would require the parents to do 2 applications or 2 registrations for buses per semester per year, and it would be a $5 fee each time. It's basically takes care of the cost for the credit card company, and that's what it is. It just covers that as a whole. So we don't make any profit regarding any of the use of Scribbles. It just allows parents then to get back onto the family dashboard that they already have established for this whole EPO process, and then get in, and we would have to develop drop-down boxes, which one of these stops do you want, and those type of things, so that they would be able to do that. So I haven't ventured into that with Scribbles, except for to ask them, can it be done? And they said, yes, it can. So we would just need to make an appointment with them to go through
And that's
that
covered
process.
in the $5,000, or the $5 registration fee,
Correct.
the drop downs, all the fun stuff?
Yes, all of that.
So the development or the.
All of that is included.
Okay.
It's not an extra fee to develop that because we already use them. It's very similar to what we already do. It would just be then a registration for that. The factor then would go back to that new clerk or employee who would then get into this process and to see what the parents registered for, to assign them to a stop, and if they have paid prior to the stop being assigned. So that's where that accountability piece for that new person in the transportation office would take over.
Okay, so based on that, if you added that out for the year, and if you were to look at 100 paid bus riders on regional, so for every 100 paid bus riders, we would potentially bring in $90,000. The problem is, though, we would bring in less FEFP. Of course, we had subtracted that off of our cost before. So if we had, for example, 440 riders, then we'd have 396,000 coming in by this revenue, but we would lose the difference between the 1322 and the 440 from the FEFP. We'd end up netting out $8,600. The reason I picked 440 is that I was able to get a hold of Wheels Direct, School Wheels Direct. I always get that name wrong. School Wheels Direct is a company that supplied paid transportation when we did away with what we used to be called corridor busing. Back in 13-14 was their last year working here. And what they did was they collected money, not through us, but directly from the parents when we stopped doing corridor busing. And they charged $6.25 per child, and they had 440 students the last year that they were here.
At the time, that only served our choice schools.
Our choice schools, right now, our regional busing, the vast majority of them are still our choice schools, although now we also service all those other schools that I listed on the list. So at 440, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If we were able to double that, then yes, we could pull in almost $600,000 through this method if we could get 880 to ride the bus.
Keeping in mind the I will be surprised if we still qualify for FEFP for riders to get FEFP if we're charging them a fee. So the savings is against the 1.6 million, not the 1 million of cost, if that makes sense. Did I say that
Well,
correctly?
didn't Dr. Miller indicate that we would still get FEFP if we were allowed to charge them a fee?
Mr. Bendis did say that we would.
Did he put that in writing?
No. At least it rolls up.
Have you had a chance to look at anything yet?
Not passionate.
I've reached out to my colleagues and I've not heard of anybody that has charged anyone to ride a bus.
So we're into the first.
The other side of the house that we want you to consider is the human capital, and that the Division of Equity, Innovation, and Choice staff demands would be to utilize that open enrollment application. So we still have some work, like I mentioned, to work with Scribbles to develop this the way we feel it would be useful to us and to transportation. We would have to do that application, the payment processes. There's some discussion that I've had with Scribbles that if a parent wanted to pay for the entire semester versus crediting their credit card per month, should something happen, should they have a medical need to drop out and stop payment or something along those lines. There was a credit card snafu that we charged them up front in August for that entire semester. If something happened, they moved away or what have you, it would be difficult to return that money to them. So we would have to work that out with them. We also need to verify that they have an accepted EPOC in order for them to register, and how to activate that EPOC to activate the bus registration. Avoiding parents who innocently would think an EPO would allow them to do the same. We need to develop the terms and conditions, again, working in conjunction with transportation. District operations and transportation staff demands would be monitoring those applications, the payments received, and those bus assignments. And that would require twice a year, each semester, in order to organize that. Or parents who want to sign up later, who say, oh, I don't want to use it, but then suddenly change their mind and want to enroll later on in the school year. They need to have a reconciliation of the cost of those payments to ridership, and also the customer service that is related to regional busing as a whole, as well as in the enforcement of the terms and conditions.
Also want to add that I asked the gentleman from School Wheels directly to be interested in coming back to Brevard County for this purpose, and would their company be interested in doing that? And without hesitation, he said, absolutely not.
I thought you were going to say, he said, sure, absolutely.
It only lasted a year.
He said they're currently in a place in South Carolina servicing some private and charter schools. They're charging between $8 and $9 per day per person. And he would have to make it even more expensive than that down here because he doesn't have any existing capital or overhead or management here, where he already has that for other reasons up there. He said there's just no way he could make a run over here.
So we have questions, and then the ultimate question of direction.
I don't know that we can give direction until we have legal.
I have a lot of thoughts, no questions. I called yesterday and asked my questions.
Okay. Do you guys have questions?
No, more thoughts.
Lots of thoughts, no questions.
And we can
Okay.
hypothetically say that if it was cleared by the DOE, what would we do? And that's, I don't know, when do you guys need an answer by and certain and all that stuff?
Well, our biggest challenge, last year we held bus registrations in April, that's a month away. And we did that in a face-to-face registration format. In order to allow Dr. Miller's team to do their routing for traditional buses, we need the parents to register between May and June, so that totally frees them up to do nothing but traditional buses in the month of July. But keep in mind, I still haven't worked with Scribbles. So getting Scribbles to the table to design it, vet it, code it, easily a 30 to 45 day time frame
So
in which
May
to
back,
develop that.
so that's all of April and half of March. So we would need to give direction by, say, the 24th
Pretty
of March.
quickly, yeah. And then any, I know with Ms. Campbell, but the big question is, what if parents decide that they don't want the seat at the school? And we don't want to delay that, because that's going to have a trickle down, because if they now want to decline the seat they originally accepted, because now regional busing is a pay to ride, then the school has to go back to the wait list. And so it's kind of just a domino effect that we need to make a decision fairly quickly.
So you need to know by like the 24th, which is the next time we're coming together, if we're gonna do this or not.
Yes.
And you'll be able to find out from Scribbles if they can do it or not?
I will call, I know that they can, it's a matter of getting it coded and sitting down and meeting with them and show, it's, the meeting of the minds is basically, what do we see as a design?
And Mr. Miller, you can call the guy that just answers the phone up at the DOE and keeps saying yes to everything, but won't put it in an email, so, yes. What do you think, Ms. Dean?
Yes, Archer, have you sent, I think you did, and I probably filed it away. Did you send out a kind of a breakdown of who's using our busing now?
I did.
Yes. Okay, thank you, I know I had it.
Is that the one from the fall, or is that updated?
That's the
From the
one
fall.
from the fall. Yeah, we honestly have not updated it.
Okay.
We're
Would it
only-
change that much, or?
No, I don't believe so. Because as Mr. Novelli mentioned, it's mostly our choice school parents that are capitalizing on this opportunity. We only have 17% of our free and reduced lunch population using regional busing at this time. Is that a marketing factor that maybe we need to get out and market it better? Again.
Or do we need to not charge the free and reduced people a reduced rate? Those are all things.
I do have a question. If we can charge, I just want to understand the numbers real quick. If we can charge and we get the FEFP money, that puts us in the positive at what number?
All depends on how many kids are paid riders. So
Right,
there's
you just
multiple
did
questions there.
440, let's just say, let's double that at 880, which is less than we have now at the 1,000, but double the 440.
1322 right now. We're in the fall, 1322.
And we're fairly confident that if we go pay to ride, that number's going to drop.
So if we keep the FEFP, then we'll have the 387, no, gross revenue is 396.
It's a
You took out 387, so it would be $700,000.
It's on the bottom.
Annual gross revenue for 880 riders, 792. Okay, before they took out the FEFP. Net revenue, no, it'd be the 792 number, right? So, Mike,
Are you looking?
That's if we have 880
that's if we have
riders.
880 riders and we can charge and we don't lose the FEFP. So that's what I want to work with just for a second in my brain. Because in that scenario, that 792 makes up the million that we're losing, right? But we still don't have any extra money for extra support. Like, I feel like we don't do this well, and I'm not blaming anyone. We just don't have, we didn't factor in extra support anywhere. We didn't fund for you all, for routing, for maintenance, for just the basic costs. Even if we charge, even if we get the FEFP, we still come up negative and we still don't have excellent service. We still don't have the support in place that we need. So we actually need more money if we want to do this well. Yes? Is that a...
And more drivers.
The most difficult thing is filling driver positions. 3 of our 4 areas have not been full the entire year. And when they're not full, we also don't have subs. And so on any given day, before the first person calls in sick, we have routes that have to be covered in everywhere except Titusville.
About 17 routes. And the people that are covering those are the people that should be supporting the buses at the same time, right? In some cases, you've got people that are leaving the dispatch offices and everything else to cover.
Well, actually, what happens most of the time is the driver will do their run and then turn around and do another run. So their second group of kids are always late. Or say that one driver calls in and then 5 other drivers divide up their route. They take them on their buses, so now all of their routes are late. There are about 34 bus drivers a day that do nothing but deal with regional busing that we could then use other places.
So I'm just gonna throw my opinion out there, and I know it's not the opinion of the whole board, but I love choice and options. I love getting our kids to where they wanna go to get service. I have very personal, close friends that use the service and have begged me not to say anything negative about it, but our mission is to get kids to a school and educate them. And there's days my kid doesn't get picked up, or he's picked up a half hour late, and so it's happening to me. I know it's happening everywhere. So we're missing the basics of service, and we're trying to have all these extra wonderful, great services, and we can't do it. And even if we start charging, it looks like we can't do it. So just want to say that.
What are you really saying?
What I'm really saying is I don't think we're capable of doing what in our hearts and minds we want to be able to do for kids right now, unless someone's got a better solution than this.
I'd like to round out her thoughts with some of my own. Back when we had this conversation in the fall, I wasn't ready to say what I'm going to say today because I felt like the two of you in particular hadn't been in your roles long enough to get the transportation department into ship shape, and you've had that time now, and I think if we're coming here, we're looking at these numbers again, and it's still a problem, and it's, it's not getting better. It's not getting worse, not getting better. The other thing that stirs my heart for us, for us to keep going with this was equity. I wanted, not just the kids whose parents could, like you said yesterday to me, had the wherewithal to get their kids to the West Shores and the West Motor School for Science to be able, but the kids who don't have that opportunity. But it really looks like, when we look at our ridership, the free and reduced lunch rate being 17% of our student population. I mean, that's not student population, of the ridership is that. So we're not really having an impact in that, and at the same time we're building into all of our secondary schools especially amazing academic and CTE and academy opportunities so that every high school, I'm thinking of high school because that's where most of our busing is going to, has great opportunities. So I say all that to say before I'd want to add another thing that creates an inequity, which is a cost to doing this, I'd rather drop the whole thing. Because I don't think, because it is causing all kinds of problems. When we look at the problems that are being caused by the regional busing, money is just one of them. Where it's service and academics, because if a kid is 45 minutes late to a class, they just miss their whole entire first period, and they're missing it again and again and again. And that is tragic. And so I feel like we're doing a disservice, and if we charge it, we're gonna help solve some of the money problem, but we won't have fixed any of the service problem. The only thing that fixes the service problem is reducing the routes, but we're still getting almost the same mileage on those buses, and we're still gonna have the same number of buses. They just want to stop so many times. So those buses, as I asked you that question yesterday, Mr. Novelli, so those buses may be more on time, but the other buses aren't. So the other problem that I have with us making this decision right now, though, so I'm going to take a step back just a second, is that if we make this decision now, the EPO window just closed. And so we're going to tell all of our parents who already made the decision where they're going, assuming there's going to be busing, there's not either, there's going to be busing, but you have to pay. And so I just can't see us doing that without having some kind of a change your mind window.
We have a wait list window.
Right, a wait list window where people can reshuffle. We really got to get that message out. There's not going to be busing, so if you change your mind, now's the time to do it. But that's going to be a nightmare. And then we talked about, would people have even paid their $30 if they'd known there wasn't transportation? Are they going to come and say, I want my $30 back because I would have never applied if I know there's not application? So I almost, don't shoot me. I kind of say, let's say we do it. I'm tossing out, what if we do it for another year and say, look, this is the last year because we can't do it. We can't do it well. But we've already said we would. So that's just one idea.
So can I ask a quick question? As we're dealing with two issues, service and cost, right? So the cost is the variable that we can increase, but the service is the one that we're flat on. I've spoken to some other organizations around us, Indian River, SCAT, all of them, and they increased their bus drivers' pay, and they stole from our south end of our county. People went to Indian River. SCAT stole our people, right? I think part of the solution, we had mentioned before about not giving a flat rate to 1010, but possibly giving a stipend for signing bonuses or an increase in bus driver beginning pay to attract the true amount of bus drivers. Because right now, we're down 30 or 40 a day, right? Roughly throughout the county is what you were saying?
It's 20-some at least.
If you look back at the last couple of years, we've lost at least that to those other organizations around us. So part of the discussion, if you really wanted to go after it, could be a solution is to increase bus driver pay as opposed to a flat rate, to increase them to attract. Create a special class stipend or something that you can pull away as they're not later on. But I did just want to put that out there. I hear from my communications from people within the bus groups, drop choice now, it's killing us, right? I mean, every single group person that's in there says get rid of it. It's killing us. And there's people that are inside an office that jump out, they have to cover routes. I mean, kids are late. I get an email about Rockledge all the time. So I think that, I think it could go both ways, but I did want to throw that out there as an idea, and that there is enough of those bus drivers that would come back to cover if we were willing to go that route.
If this was making a profit, I could see doing that. I mean, yes, I want to pay bus drivers more, but where's that fund going to come from? Even if we get the FEFP and we start charging, we still don't have any kind of a window. We're still losing money, and there's no money to give signing bonuses.
In many other places, including the military and other places, you have a design class, which we have already through the state for what science and other things has a stipend, right? It's not outside the box to use that as part of it. You would just have to reduce the amount that you're giving the other people. So instead of a 70% raise to everybody in 1010, you would go to a 60 cent and possibly increase bus drivers. I don't know.
So next year you're talking?
Yes. Yeah, you would have to do it. You would have to make it a point for next year, a special class for those areas. That's all. And it's not a viable option. You may or may not think that, but it was an option.
Ms. McDougal, would you like to weigh in?
I really struggle with getting, I made myself known before, I struggle with getting rid of this. I understand that it's a problem. I do like Mr. Sisson was saying about, let's look at, can we do something to attract more bus drivers? If it isn't pay. But I look and many of my schools are on that list. And they're not just high schools. I got middle schools, I got elementary schools. So, and charging, I agree with Tina on that, charging isn't gonna get us where we need to be. It's just not. If we charge a fee, we'll lose ridership anyhow, but it won't really solve what our real problem is. So,
If we're gonna keep it, I support charging, like making up some of this difference.
I'm in the same boat as far as creating a charge. My concern is the free and reduced kids, because that's the target that I would love to see use this more. And I'm afraid that some of the areas would be hard hit, because those are some of the attractive people. So if we're gonna go to charge, I would like us to look at an option where we're not charging those kids. And I know that causes the other groups to pay more, but I just.
Not necessarily, because we're still not breaking even. We'll just break, we'll like lose a little more. I mean, this is crazy math. It's like, here, let's charge, but it still doesn't
We put
happen.
ourselves in a tough position to charge the others more, so that the free and reduced can be less.
Or you just say, okay, minus the free and reduced, how much is the cost to go that route? We've already set a precedent in this county to reduce costs in many areas based on free and reduced. Almost all single thing applications has a free and reduced, right? All the way from 80, tests to.
And if I could just bring up one concept that we haven't really discussed, in my mind, it's kind of the elephant in the room. If a child decides they want to take the regional busing to the school, and we do it at a high school, they literally have to get on that bus to get home. If their parents cannot go to the school for after-school activities, after-school sports, that's probably why a lot of kids are choosing to stay in their own area, not necessarily if they don't have the capability of their parents coming to get them. I mean, I think about picking up my daughter late at night as a student athletic trainer after football games, and well, what if I couldn't do that? Or what if I had to even drive even further to another school? So I worry about the students who may like to do this and have the access to other programs, but simply, not being able to stay after school for some of these extracurricular activities might make their deciding factors. And that's why we're not seeing a huge difference in the number of free and reduced lunch students. And maybe I'm sticking my foot in my mouth, but.
So my gut says we need to charge actual costs. I mean, why are we, if we are gonna do this and move forward, why are we suffering and trying and piecemealing, like actual costs of what it costs to support this, to make it run well, to stop draining from what we do have. Actual costs, and I don't think $5 a day is your actual cost. Well, it's clearly not.
It is for the divided by 433 if they divide it by how many are writing it right now.
The problem is you charge anything, you're going to have fewer riders. If you charge more, you'll have even fewer riders. I can't predict where you're going to be able to make a profit. If I take the advice of the administrator from School Wheels Direct, I think I know the answer.
Mr. Novelli, on or whoever can answer it actually, on one of the slides, on the cost slide near the beginning, it said that the FEFP received from the state is approximately 1/3 of the district cost. I thought that our FEFP received from the state was closer to like 46 cents on our transportation costs. So are we receiving less?
Well, it costs more to run regional buses than it costs to run regular buses. They travel further.
Okay, so it's because of the distance.
Yeah, they use a lot more diesel, they use a lot more tires, a lot more oils, they have to have inspections more often, that type of thing.
One of our new buses that started in August, when we went home for Christmas, had 21,000 miles on it. I'll just add one thing, is that the principal hat that I put on, it keeps me awake at night, knowing that these kids are getting to school late, because I know what that does to our classroom.
So what do you want us to do, Dr. Miller?
Yes, Dr. Miller.
I would like to do away with regional busing and concentrate on our regular students.
Ms. Archer, what do you think?
I tend to side with Ms. Campbell in the sense that I would like to see what reducing our stops by 50% would do, and at least give our parents fair warning. Because I have to worry about the parent who did a 7th grade application to one of our choice junior senior highs, and now is going to, oh, okay, we've got regional busing for a year, but at least they know I want to take that seat, and then I'm going to have to plan, for the future, as opposed to just dropping it entirely. Because there are also students who are in their 8th grade year of completing something at one of maybe our Cambridge programs or what have you. I just feel like it's more fair to our community, give the year's heads up.
Mr.
It's
Miller,
tough.
cutting those routes in half, is that going to help?
That will probably help get some of the buses on time. And I totally agree with what Ms. Archer is saying. It's just, if I have those 34 regional bus drivers back, we might not have as big a problem as what we're having. But It's 34 a people a double-edged day sword. do
Yeah.
nothing but regional busing.
If we have 17 on average current vacancies, that's half of the 34, so those drivers could fill the vacancies, and then you'd have 15 to 20 left for sub-coverage. When you have, it's not gonna, that isn't gonna solve it, but in terms of covering other routes that are vacant, because you're averaging how many what am I trying to say? So you have 17 current vacancies, and then another, was it 20 drivers absent on any given day?
Workman's comp, those kind of
And
things.
it's starting to spill over, because I know we just recently experienced, we've got kids who are going to MPAs, and we can't pick you up till 5:15 because we don't have everybody has to finish, you have to have a driver to finish their routes. We don't have any of this extra that can do the field trips during the school day, and so I'm sure if it's affecting our music, it's affecting our athletic teams.
Well, we just met and had to change the time for middle school track and field because we couldn't get them there on time.
Thank you for all you're doing and taking this job.
Did you ever think you'd be doing this when you retired?
Never.
But he's still smiling.
Yes.
Today.
I'm okay with Katie / Ms. Archer's option of phasing it down. And, maybe some miracle will happen between now and then. Maybe we can get more bus drivers by giving them more of a raise. I don't know, to put it back in full force, but I don't think we can go on like we are.
Can we poll the parents too, to send out a thing just saying, hey, we're thinking about this, would you stick around?
You
Does
know,
that
we
matter?
did that 2 years ago when we wanted to, are you interested in regional busing? And 2,500 parents say, oh yes, we're interested, but we only had 1,100 that were actually. So I'm not sure that's the
But if you ask the people
reliable.
that are already riding the buses, we're thinking about charging, would you, and you're saying that that variable would be too high out of an actual number? Okay.
I just don't feel like there's gonna be enough follow through when they comment.
And especially the average citizen doesn't realize we don't have to do this.
And I think we need to really market that, honestly, Ms. Campbell. When parents call upset, we remind them this is a courtesy service. This is not statutorily required by the school board. And therefore, we are doing our personal best. We're short, when we spend the time on our customer service end and they go, oh, okay, now I get it. But I think we need to do a better job of marketing that. Even though last year, everything we published was courtesy.
I get the text, the West Shore bus is not here, the West Shore bus didn't show up. I get it, and I'm like, it's just bad service. Like, we're not there. They don't really care if we're supposed to or not. When we say we're gonna be there, we should be there.
One of the concerns we have talked about is when we go to a pay-to-ride if we went to a pay-to-ride concept, there will be an heightened sense of expectation that there are no issues for that bus.
That's a good point.
And the reality is there's gonna be issues because we are understaffed and we've gotta take care of all of our kids. So I just, I don't know what that is, but we understand. I would like to suggest, rather than provide direction right now, you understand the complexity of the issue. We don't know what our budget is gonna be from the state. I mean, that may be a factor that contributes to decisions that would weigh into this. So hopefully we'll have a better sense of what that is in a week or two. If we can wait until if the team can start planning, alternate courses, we can potentially revisit this probably by the April 14th board meeting. But I would just offer that suggestion.
That doesn't even give our people 60 days to do their coding for their systems. I don't want to send them on a wild goose chase to do coding, etc. for this online registration if it's not going to come to fruition. I'm concerned about that.
I think she had mentioned 24th.
I'm sorry?
Just 24th of March. We'll know the
Oh, I
budget
thought,
by then.
I'm sorry. I
He said 18th, but I was saying, you had mentioned that might be.
Right.
Just saying, we'll know the budget by then. Gibbs can hunt down his friend.
We'll know a budget if session resumes. Right now, they're not in session, and so I just don't know what the status is.
If there's not gonna be busing budget, there's no conversation up there for transportation increases. I mean, if we get some amazing budget, it's gonna be for salaries, right?
Well, we don't, on both sides of it, we don't know what the BSA is gonna be. I mean, it's everywhere from $18 to $50 right now. So, and we don't know what the FRS is gonna be. I don't know. I'm just saying that it is another big variable in this consideration, in terms of, do we have funding to potentially do something to attract bus drivers? Or do we have other budget, challenges to discuss? So, I don't know that a decision today or direction today is, given we may be reconsidering that in a week or two, March 24th. So I would just.
We're fine waiting a week or two. I just didn't want to wait till the end of April. That really just puts all of us behind any kind of planning and implementation of online registration or anything along those lines.
And you have PAR, and kids aren't going to those schools, those teachers have to leave. I mean, there's a lot of principal coordination and everything else that occurs.
I can't see, I really can't see, if the board decides to do this, I can't see us implementing it this year. I really can't. I think it would be more negative to our public and to our schools. I think it would impact it, as you were saying, Ms. Archer, I just see a debacle. Anyhow, I mean, I really do. I just don't think, I don't want to rush something like this if we're going to do this.
I agree.
And there's a lot of moving pieces, and it will affect our schools in a negative way. And
at our students.
But we need a major influx of cash if we're gonna do it right. I mean, I think if we can't do it right, then we should need to get out of the business.
And if we don't do anything this year, we just, all of those classes that those people are missing and everything else is the other end of the argument.
Right,
So
absolutely.
we may not be able to do this to fidelity, but at the same time, we're destroying our classrooms just like Ms. Campbell said.
So I haven't weighed in yet, but I'm going to.
Oh, good.
And I'm gonna attempt to do so quickly and without,
Pontification.
Yelling at us.
staying in my lane. So this is, and I tread lightly because I absolutely get all of the challenges with it. Everything that you all have expressed as challenges, I get, I see it, and it concerns me as well. But as is so often the case, and you know, I'll say I advocate for all students in the district, and I'm not saying that my issue is more important than the issues that you guys are bringing forward. But I have 120 students in my district that are accessing choice opportunities via regional busing. And they are choice opportunities that they do not have access to in our district, with the exception of the 40 students that are going to South Lake. Out of the 40 students going to South Lake, 20 of them are free and reduced lunch. So, you know, if we are going to look at doing away with regional busing, then my request would be, bring me Cambridge, bring me IB, bring me, you know what I mean? Like, I can't go backwards on providing opportunities for the north end of the county. I just, you know, it's we've been having this conversation since the very first day, since before I was even on the board, about the opportunities in the north end of the county, and they have never been equitable. And I'm not saying that regional busing is necessarily the answer, but what I'm saying is that we have to come up with some solution. And I don't know what that solution looks like, but I'm not going backward.
So, to be a choice district, I do feel we need the budget. Because if we are a district of choice, and this is what our legislators certainly push, that we need to get our students to whatever school they want to go to have that choice.
And maybe next year we're able to advocate for them actually supporting choice busing since they're so big on choice. I don't know, but like I said, I don't mean to make that issue trump all of the other concerns that you all brought forward, because they are all very valid concerns. But my request would be, I need a solution for the north end, whatever that looks like. Any additional board member questions, comments, concerns? Do you all have what you need for now? We're postponing until we get a response on that.
We can hang tight.
Awesome. Then I will call this board meeting adjourned. Thank you all.